Back.
Now, it's time for the Midday Show. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
What's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome into Middays, 97.5 The Fanatic. I'm Bill Colarulo, along with Amy Fadul today. What's up, Amy?
Hey, Bill.
No Ray Dunn today. We got our man Tom Alvord behind the glass. What's up, Tom?
What's going on, guys? How we doing?
Well, we'd be doing better if the Phillies won last night because we were starting to think the mojo was back, but we'll get into the Phillies a little bit later because there were some good signs even though they lost last night, Amy. Some good signs. But we'll talk about it. I want to react to what we just heard from Kellen Moore. So Kellen Moore spoke to the media today. Eagles back on the practice field again. They got 4 straight. Then they got the preseason game on Friday night. We're going to be joined by Todd Herremans at 12 o'clock. Looking forward to talking to Todd, who we look at this training camp and how easy things are under Nick Sirianni. They certainly weren't easy when Todd played for Andy Reid. So I want to talk to him about that. Different era, though, Amy.
Yeah, much different. He was also up at Lehigh, and one of my favorite things, when you go cover the moving day when it was at Lehigh, which you don't do anymore because it's NovaCare, so there is no moving in day. And when Todd Herremans would pull up in his black van that had no windows, and that's not creepy at all, and just unload everything. That's when you knew camp had started, when Herremans' black van rolled up. You're like, all right, now we can begin, because he's quite the character. So I'm looking forward to talking with him.
Yeah, that should be fun. Want to get his opinion on whether or not the starters should play and all those good things. But let's react to Kellen Moore. So a lot of it was what you would expect. And Amy, I think you said excuse me. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I think you said he talks like a head coach, which...
Oh, Kellen Moore?
Yes.
Absolutely. Doesn't give you much.
Yeah.
He's like a seasoned head coach, I would say.
He's not going to give you the Vic Fangio brutal honesty, as you said yesterday, no filter Vic. So it was a lot of, they're doing an excellent job.
Everything looks great.
Yeah, we're working on it. We're building off of this. We're building off of that. But I thought it was interesting when he was asked about the fact that he's never had a mobile quarterback before. This was Kellen Moore's response.
Yeah, quarterback run game. Obviously, it's a phenomenal piece. Very prominent in college football. Certainly, there's aspects of it still in the NFL. It certainly gives you the extra numbers in the run game, but there's an awareness. NFL is long season, so we just got to be smart about it as we go, but we want to continue to utilize it as much as we can.
So interesting. So he talks phenomenal piece, and it is. It's something that Jalen Hurts does very well. It's something this team has utilized to their advantage in years past, not as much last season. But then he talks about how you got to have awareness because it's a long season and we have to be safe with it. As we try to read between the lines, because he does give you the head coach type answers, you think they're going to run the ball with Jalen this year?
Yes, I do. I think that he has recognized that it is an important aspect of Jalen Hurts' game and therefore an important aspect of the confidence level for Jalen Hurts. I think if you take that away and you tell him he cannot do it, you get in trouble. Because that he needs to rely on. I think you can be smart about it. I think you have to present him, with the things that we saw last year were the first option. He read it, not there, panicked, ran. There wasn't that the progression of the reads. There wasn't certainly any kind of check down situation. We talked yesterday. DeAndre Swift was a non-existent, part of that offense after we thought he was going to be such a big part after watching training camp and all the hype and the talk. It wasn't. It was a very simplified offense. Too simplified, and I feel like they took the run option out of it in the fact that it was like, well, don't run, and then they started messing with it and was like, oh, make sure you're not running, and then he would start. You could see him just frazzled back there. So I think that if you try to take out the run completely for Jalen Hurts, you're flirting with disaster. It's just too ingrained in his confidence and how he operates as a quarterback. You have to do it, as you heard Kellen Moore, you have to do it smartly. You have to, pick the spots. I think you have to look for the opportunities. And I think it's about getting confident in everything else, having every check down available, all the reads open, maybe something over the middle for a change, maybe not a wide receiver screen, maybe a running back screen, different options. But if you tell Jalen Hurts you can't run, I think that would be detrimental to his development and his confidence. So I think that it's going to be a smart part of their game.
I hope it is, because I do think it's something that puts a lot of stress on defenses to have that +1 in the running game, as you've heard them say before. And last year, it wasn't as if he stopped running. It just wasn't effective as much as it's been in years past.
It's like a panic mode.
Yeah, and they just didn't have any disguises for it, especially in the RPO. We know that the San Francisco 49ers, Nick Bosa, said after that game, hey, we gave the blueprint on how to beat them, and I think they did in a lot of respects. And this was what people's problems was with Sirianni and Brian Johnson. Hey, they didn't have any counterpunch. Teams adjusted. They didn't have a counterpunch. I do expect Kellen Moore to have that counterpunch this year. And you look at the numbers. I think I've told you these numbers before. When Jalen Hurts has more than 10 carries a game. Now, I'm not suggesting he should have 10 carries a game, but this just highlights how effective they are when he runs. More than 10 carries, they're 16-4. More than 14 carries.
That's ridiculous. No, something's gone very wrong.
They're 10-0.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Well,
Look, I'm with you. It is. You don't want to run it 14 times. I'd like to see what
some of those like 10 games are, like who they were against. But yeah, 14 times is maybe a little much. We should dial it back a bit. But to your point about, I feel like last year it wasn't a confident run. It wasn't this design runs. You're talking about the RPOs. It wasn't even. They didn't sell. There was no creativity to that offense last year. So if there was a run, it was like, oh, A.J. Brown's not open, and I look over, I got nothing, there's a guy breathing down my throat, I'm just going to take off. And he wouldn't take off because the pocket had already collapsed and everything. So that's when you're looking at the difference. And then when you look at the fumbles, same amount of fumbles almost as the previous year, but he lost them at a much higher rate.
A little bit of bad luck in there.
Yeah, there is. But when you're taking off and running more, that's where the bad luck can come up and rear its ugly head. So you do want to, I like that Kellen Moore said, you have to be smart about it. You have to really kind of choose the spots. And I think when they're designing the offense, and I'm sure Kellen Moore worked a lot in the offseason about designing the offense and these runs for the opportunity and making sure that they're going to be used in a smart way and not just simply reactionary. So you're going to open yourself up to a fumble or something like that, or sack or anything like that.
And Kellen Moore is going to have to work on it, because you look at his last 3 seasons. Justin Herbert, 52 runs.
Yeah, he doesn't run.
Yeah, Dak Prescott the year before, 45. Dak Prescott in 2021, 48. Jalen Hurts last year, 157, 165 the year before, 139 the year before. So this is a lot different skill set on a quarterback than Kellen Moore's ever had in his career. But I do think he's a smart enough guy to figure it out. But that's the first question we're going to throw out to all the listeners, and hello to our YouTube audience checking in. It sounds like, me and Amy are in agreement, it does sound like Kellen Moore wants to utilize the run. This isn't the first time he's talked about the quarterback run. We've heard Nick Sirianni talk about adding some wrinkles to the quarterback run. Do you want to see Jalen Hurts run the football this year? Do you want to see them try to change him and make him into one of these quarterbacks? They did it to Donovan back in the day. I think Donovan was a little bit different of a quarterback than Jalen. Or are you okay saying, hey, you know what? Let the guy do what he does well. I just gave you the numbers. They win games when Jalen runs. Now, I'm not suggesting he should run as much as those numbers indicated, but they do win games. So we want to hear from you. 610-632-0975. Do you want to see Jalen run, or do you want him to become more of a pocket passer? I want to see him run. Amy, where do you want him to be? Do you want to see him run the football, or would you rather him be protected in the pocket?
No. That's not Jalen Hurts. You don't have a guy like that, sitting there under center for every snap of the game. I feel like that would be just not setting him up for success, to use something from Andy Reid. I feel like for Jalen Hurts to be successful, and obviously you pointed out some of the numbers, they bear it out. When he is confident in his run game, confident that it is an aspect of the offense, an integral aspect, not just an aspect of, oh, wait, I can't do anything else, I'm just going to take off running. Something that they've worked on, something that they have as part of like an integration of the offense. I think that's when he's at his best. You can't take something that's inherent in his game that he's utilized at every level of his game and just all of a sudden be like gone. I'm not saying he's like Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson running is almost 50-50 in his mind, I think, when you talk to Lamar Jackson, it is equal to his passing game. I don't think Jalen Hurts views running in that aspect when he talks about his offensive mindset, but I think it is a really good tool for him. And if you took that away, you'd be really hamstringing him when it comes to making this offense successful. He has to run. I'm fine with him running. I like when he runs. Good things happen usually when he runs. But if you don't do it in a smart way, that's when you get into trouble. And I mentioned the lost fumbles. The numbers weren't good. Like you mentioned how many times he rushed, but his numbers rushing as far as yards gained dropped off quite a bit.
Yeah,
it wasn't successful.
Yeah, 4.6 yards per carry in 2022, down to 3.9 last year.
Yeah, so it's a difference, and it looked different. When you look, you can say the numbers, but then when you watch him, it was just like, okay, he would run when he needs to run and when it's designed to run. I feel like last year was so much more reactionary. It was more of a panicked run, and that's when you saw the fumbles lost and you saw the lack of the yardage gained. So it really wasn't beneficial to that offense, and it has to be in order for him, I think, to be successful.
Now, here's another interesting one. Last year, they start the season 10-1. He averaged 10.4 carries per game during that 10-1 start. We all know how the finish occurred, right? They collapse, go 1-6. 10.4 carries drops to 6.3 per game. Now,
well, they're behind in all of those games.
Good point, right?
They're just airing it out.
He can't run it as much, but I also think when you're looking at what that does for a defense, when you have to account for the quarterback, when you know as a defense that when you have just a traditional pocket passer, you don't have to worry about them in the running game at all. Now you got Jalen Hurts. If he's a part of the running game, if you know he can pull it and come around the outside, well, how are you crashing down on Saquon Barkley? How are you immediately dropping back to cover AJ and Devontae and Dallas Goedert and maybe Johnny Wilson, who we got to talk about later on in the show? People are going to love him after Friday night.
Of course they are.
They're already seeing the Twitter posts and the Instagram posts, and they're already loving him. But so I want to see him a part of the game. Now, Trey Turner, let's switch to the Phillies for a second, hasn't been playing well.
No.
You know how he can help the city right now? Get over to the NovaCare complex and teach Jalen Hurts how to slide because Turner's got the best slide I've ever seen in Major League Baseball.
In the history of baseball, there has never been a prettier. That's why called shiesty.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It's Trey shiesty.
Tom, behind the glass, have you seen a prettier slide than Trey Turner's slide? Now, you haven't seen it often because he hasn't been on base the last couple of weeks.
I haven't seen it in a few weeks. It's been a little bit. But, his slide, he is just a natural-born athlete, one of the best slides, probably the best slide in all of baseball. Yeah, give Jalen Hurts a couple pointers. Why not?
I would love it.
They tried to do that with Vic a couple of years ago.
He was the worst.
Yes.
Vic could not figure it out.
Amazing. He's a tremendous athlete. He was just like, I got nothing on this. I'm just not doing it. I'm like, how do you know how to do everything else possible? Like a tremendous basketball player, a tremendous football player, and trying to tell him how to slide, it was the ugliest thing I've ever seen.
Why slide when you just run past people?
That is exactly what I think. Yes. Well, that's like when I talk to my 9-year-old about sliding. He's like, well, I don't have to slide if I hit a home run. That is just not how this works.
Love the mindset.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but he does need to figure it out. He does need to be smarter this year. Jalen Hurts look, you don't have to take on the tackler. You don't have to try to get that extra yard or two. Get down, get out of bounds. Let's be smart. I just don't want to see them take that away from Jalen Hurts' game.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not only talking about him as a scrambler. I do want to see them call design runs to Jalen Hurts. It doesn't have to be 10 times a game, but by calling those plays, by having a play in there where it's a design run to the quarterback, it forces defenses to game plan. I don't want it to only be, hey, Jalen's scrambling. Let's have some design runs mixed in.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like if you have the design runs, then to go back to your point about keeping defenses, honest, if there are designed runs, then it's not just always a panicked run. It's not always just, okay, everything else is broken down. That's obviously always going to be there in the back of his mind because he is a mobile quarterback. But when you have design runs to a certain extent, 10 carries, 9 carries, whatever, then that really does keep the defense honest. When you go away from that, and the thing is, when you look at the collapse, the 1-6 finish, the lack of creativity in that offense, and I know he didn't run as much. No one did anything as much as they did in the beginning. In the beginning of the season, it was a bit of fool's gold, that 10-1 start. They didn't look as good as that, but they certainly looked a lot better than they finished. But I felt like there was no creativity. There was no multiplicity in any of the offensive looks we've talked about it. If you look at the all 22 of some of those games, it's the simplest looking offense you've ever seen. It looks like Pee Wee football.
Very
it's just
predictable.
Like, oh, here we go. We got gunners on the left and gunners on the right. We'll see you guys later. All right. There was nothing, no movement, no action coming out of anywhere in the backfield. There was no threat of a run. It was really bad. We don't need to rehash it. It was bad. We know that. So I think Kellen Moore brings so much more to this, including obviously the motion, but with that comes these designed runs. And even if you don't utilize them, the fact that you have them and you know that Jalen Hurts can run them, and you will show that in certain ways, being smart about it, that will enable the defense to really have to second guess where the ball is going to go to.
So send us a text message, 610-632-0975. Do you want Jalen Hurts to run the ball this season? Make sure you give us your name so Tom can give you credit for the text on the air. But we're going to go to the phones now because Dave from Drexel Hill wants Jalen to run, but wants to do it a little bit differently. What's up, Dave? You're on the Fanatic.
How y'all doing? Hey, first of all, I think Jalen was doing it a little bit different when we went to the Super Bowl, But here's what I want him to do. I want him just to go in and watch some game tape of Patrick Mahomes, because you say Patrick's a passing quarterback, but the truth is he runs too. And he runs.
He does, right, Dave, but they don't.
They got Super Bowls.
But they don't, and I appreciate the call, Dave, but they don't call design runs for Patrick Mahomes. See, that's the difference. Mahomes is extremely athletic. And first of all, everything Mahomes does, come on. I mean,
I would watch tape from Mahomes, too.
Yeah, of course. Anybody would take Patrick Mahomes and the style that he plays.
But he does run more than people might guess.
He does, but he usually does it when things break down. He makes time, or he'll scramble. They're not calling a design run. They're not calling an RPO where Mahomes is pulling it and taking it around the outside, or a quarterback sweep like we've seen at times with Jalen Hurts. So to Dave's point, yes, watch film of Patrick Mahomes, but I think they're completely different skill sets between Mahomes, who's a true pocket passer that has the ability to run, and Jalen, who I don't want to say he's just a runner, because I think his throwing ability is underrated. I think he is a great passer, but he uses his legs to set up other things.
I think there's somewhere between. I think Mahomes is the perfect in between like a guy like you were talking about, Justin Herbert, who's like 40 whatever carries a game, and Lamar Jackson, who's whatever 200 or something a season, or 40 a season, and then 200 a season. I would imagine, you're looking at like 65, 70 or so for Patrick Mahomes. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but that would lend it to, all right, 70 times in a season you're going to run. Jalen Hurts is probably going to be closer to 100, 120. I feel like that's a little bit more realistic, but to the point of keeping defenses honest, Patrick Mahomes is a scrambler, and that's where the difference is.
Exactly.
It's a different mindset, and he will create, and he will be able to, and he knows how to slide because he was an excellent baseball player.
He was a good baseball player, right?
Yeah, his dad played in the pros.
A.J. Brown, too.
Yes, A.J. Brown is a very good baseball player. Both of them. Well, Mahomes, I think, got drafted in baseball, too. He played it until it doesn't matter. But those guys are obviously very athletic, but he knows how to slide, so he needs to kind of maybe like also learn on that with I'm sure I've seen Jalen Hurts learn how to play golf. I'm pretty sure he can learn how to slide just fine.
Saquon's a stud golfer now as well. But getting our YouTube chat checking in, Neil Deaver says, I think he has to run some to maximize how dynamic the offense can be. And I'm right there with Neil, because you have all of these weapons now that teams have to game plan for, and you add in Jalen Hurts running the football. I mean, it really is a nightmare for defenses, especially now that you have a guy with Kellen Moore who we know can design plays. He's called plays. He's designed plays for a number one offense in the National Football League. So I'm so excited to see what's this guy going to do with all these weapons and a mobile quarterback. And then I'm trying to read this YouTuber's name. I'm just going to call him Yam Snow. Yam Snow says, Jalen is a bit underrated as a pocket passer. He has something like a 70% completion percentage in the pocket. He seems to struggle throwing while running, as weird as that sounds. Well, to your point, what I've seen, and I don't have the numbers to support this, but what I've seen, it's when they force him to roll out to his left that he struggles. No, to his right.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yes. I'm trying to do it in my head.
Switch that.
Yes, it's to his right that they try to get him not to do that. But, yeah, he is a good pocket passer. I'm not saying he's not. But when you have that fear in defenses where maybe now the linebacker takes an extra half step because he's worried that Jalen's going to pull it and run, it opens up that passing game. That's why I think he continues to have to run the ball.
Yeah, the multiple looks is what you're looking at, and that's what Kellen Moore has talked about, a lot at his opening press conference when we heard him at the beginning of training camp, and then a little bit today. Kellen Moore doesn't give you a lot, but he does give you something, and it's just basically talking about the dynamic nature of this offense, what they're planning to do, and you have to include Jalen Hurts' run game in that. I think that Jalen Hurts, it would be not everything is connected for him. So if you took away one with the other, if you made him strictly a pocket passer, it would not work. If you made him more like Lamar Jackson, where he has to rely on the run a lot, Lamar Jackson is, not 50-50, but it's close, 60-40. I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but Lamar Jackson is a running quarterback. There is no doubt about it. It is designed part of their offense. I think you take a step back from that level. If you made it more about the run game, then Jalen Hurts and everybody else, it would just affect everything too much. I think they have to have it together, and it has to be in a way, whatever it is, 75-25, 80-20, when you're looking at it, because with the passes that he needs to make and the way that this offense is and the way it's timed, you have to be able to keep the defenses just a little bit off, and the run game will help them do that because it's all about timing. Right, you have to get the passes and so if you can get them just by a little extra second or a half a second, it makes all the difference in getting Devontae that little bit of room he needs to, and making the extra little move on the side for A.J. Brown, and that way it opens it all up. Like, that's what you don't think about. If you have the threat of the run, the defenses pause for just a tiny bit, and then that opens up a window for these elite receivers that the Eagles have.
We're going to continue that conversation coming up, but we're also going to have to talk about, Amy, the list came out of players who are not practicing today. And there's a name on the list that has me a little bit concerned. We'll get into all of that next.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Week 3 of training camp. I'm Tom Atwood, and this update is brought to you by WhatsApp, LOL, and ROFL without the green bubbles. There's a way to share no matter what
This 10 o'clock hour on The Fanatic is brought to you by Window Nation. Take advantage of Window Nation's 50% off sale on all style windows. Plus, make no down payment with no payments and no interest for 12 full months. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. Bill Colarulo with you today, along with Amy Fadul and Tom Alvord behind the glass. We started the show talking about something that Kellen Moore said with regard to the quarterback run game, something he hasn't really had to do before because he had quarterbacks like Dak and Justin Herbert. Both are athletic guys, but both guys run the football really when they had to scramble, more so Dak Prescott than Herbert. But Herbert, for being a big guy, is actually pretty athletic and can do it as well. But he wasn't calling a lot of design runs for those quarterbacks, something I do expect him to do with Jalen Hurts. So we threw out the question to start the show, do you want to see Jalen Hurts run the football? But before we get back into that conversation, Amy, the practice report came out for the Eagles. A little bit concerned here. Now, some of the guys we've known they haven't been practicing. Linebacker Aaron Burks, wide receiver Paris Campbell still battling the groin. Mekhi Gardner has the hamstring. Brandon Smith has a concussion. C.J. Gardner-Johnson not practicing today with a shoulder injury, and according to reports is having an MRI of the shoulder. That's a concern.
Especially after Nick Sirianni. Oh, he's okay. He's fine. Came right out from the tent. He's okay. I mean, you never know. MRI could be just showing any kind of, if there's any kind of damage, anything that would prevent them from, practicing again. I don't know. Could be just precautionary.
The issue I have, though, and this is one of the problems, when they first signed CJ, as excited as I was, and I said it when they signed him, I just didn't want them to be finished at the safety position because CJ hasn't stayed healthy. We went over these numbers yesterday. He's never played a 17-game season. He hasn't played a full season since his rookie year. Last year only plays 3 regular season games. The year with the Eagles, only 12. You don't have much behind him. Sidney Brown's still recovering from an ACL tear. Reed Blankenship, I like Reed Blankenship. Hold on. I'm getting updates from Tom here. So there's conflicting reports. Jeff McClain is saying not long-term injury to CJ. Our own Andrew DeCecco is saying potentially long-term.
That is 2 different things.
And we also, Chris Franklin, NJ.com, doesn't seem to be long-term, and John Clark says it doesn't seem to be long-term as well. So I think there's some questions of what's going on, but it doesn't seem
Andrew,
too serious.
3-1. We're going to go with the good news.
Yeah, we'll go with the good news. But either way, even if CJ's okay, let's hope that he is, this is just highlighting how thin of a position that is for the Philadelphia Eagles. Because behind C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you have Reed Blankenship, who's also battled some injuries, nothing serious in his first 2 years, but's missed games. And a lot of people aren't even sold on him yet. I happen to think he's going to have a very good year. But then Sidney Brown battling back from the ACL. And then you have guys who've never played the position. James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox. I wouldn't be surprised if Howie Roseman does something at that safety position.
Yeah, you look out there, and there are some free agents, but then you could look at everybody else's guys that are on the depth chart, right? People that might not be starting, and see if there's anything for you there. The worry with that is, when do you get them? Like, how quickly can you get them here? This is, a lot of people play a Vic Fangio style of defense, but this is not, maybe they're not as familiar with it. How quickly can you get them up to speed? It's still at the beginning of training camp. They haven't had their first game. It's coming up on Friday. But at the same time, like, when do you make the move? So that's when I'm sure the MRI will tell them, all right, if he's only going to be out a couple of weeks, fine, we're all good. CJ, GJ can play the safety position, call it a day. But if it's something that's going to linger, then I think that's when you would have to make the move. It's not a knee-jerk thing. It's not like, oh, my gosh, you went in, we're having an MRI, you better make all the calls. But I imagine that they've, I think even before this injury, they probably looked around the league and thought, well, are there any safeties that we might be interested in? We seem to be a little bit thin at that position. And I think that's probably been an ongoing kind of quest for them. I don't think it's something you pull the trigger on today unless the results come back and tell you something that it's not.
Well, the name I want, but he wants to be a starter, and that's Justin Simmons. But the longer he's out there without a job, maybe he's willing to take a job here. I just would prefer to have some depth at that position in light of the injuries. But if we get any updates on the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson injury, we will certainly provide that because This is a station for breaking news all day, every day, Tom.
Tim McManus also says doesn't appear to be long-term for CJGJ.
All right, that's good.
So some good news.
And it's a shoulder. I mean, it's not ideal to have a little bit of an injury to the shoulder. Like, I've had separated shoulders. You could play. It's painful, but you could play through it depending on the severity. He's not a quarterback trying to throw the football.
The injury last year was the pec, right? For CJGJ? Yeah.
Pec last year, kidney or liver when he was here?
Kidney laceration, I believe.
Yeah,
it was.
kidney laceration. So,
I imagine it's not great to tackle with that shoulder.
No, it probably hurts. But I'm sure they'll.
No, you're fine. We've never done it, so you can do it.
They'll give him something for that.
Rub some dirt on it.
Right.
Hey,
I love when we do stuff like this. Like, that's fine. Like, yeah, I broke my collarbone once. I was back out there.
That's the concern.
At the bar.
It can't be a collarbone. A collarbone, he's out. But
no, that was broken.
A separated shoulder. Like,
That's fine. I
played a whole
shoulder.
season. I played a whole season with a separated shoulder. I couldn't do a push-up, but you could tackle. It's
Did
interesting.
you tackle?
And I stubbed my toe.
I wasn't tackling Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, oddly enough, I feel.
Yeah, it was not
CMC
tackling.
wasn't on the other side there.
Wasn't tackling him. But hopefully, Jalen Hurts doesn't get tackled a lot this year when he runs the football, because we're talking about that to start the show. Kellen Moore, it sounds like they're going to utilize the quarterback run, and that's the question we threw out. Do you want to see Jalen Hurts run the ball? You can still get in on our text line, 610-632-0975. But we're going to go to the phones because Tom from Westchester has an opinion on this. What's up, Tom? You're on the Fanatic.
Hey, good morning, Bill. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning. Good morning, Tom.
Have a disagreement with you, Bill. You mentioned that you thought that Jalen was a very good pocket passer and an average runner. I think you have it backwards, if I understood you correctly.
No, I didn't say he was an average runner. I think he's a very good runner. I said I think he's a underrated pocket passer. I don't think, and I think you're going to prove my point here. You're going to say you don't think he's that good.
He's not. He's not. And I think it goes back to even the college days. You know, Nick Saban benched him because he couldn't read defenses. He couldn't complete the passes that he needed to. But with this offense that the Eagles have, if he manages the game properly and the plays are called properly, the Eagles will do very well. But he is not, at least in my opinion, anywhere near the top 8 to 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think 2 of the rookies are going to pass him, namely Caleb Williams and Daniels.
All right, Tom, appreciate it, but Tom sounds like a Jalen Hurts hater. Let's call it what it is. I think Tom is a Jalen Hurts hater. Not near the top 8 to 10 quarterbacks and thinks the rookies are going to pass him.
Which would put him down to 12?
I can't get behind that. Look,
just the top half of the league. I get that he's not top 5. Well, I'll give you, top 10 I feel like is realistic.
I think Jalen needs to be better when it comes to passing, but I would say he is above average. Look at what he did in the Super Bowl. I mean, the guy threw 27 of 38, 71% completion rate, over 300 yards passing, had a quarterback rating of 103.4, and you've seen this guy do it in the past. In 2022, I don't think there was anyone saying that this guy couldn't throw the ball. This is coming off of last year. And we've seen this on YouTube as well, people saying, what was the caller's name, Tom or Bob?
Tom.
Tom saying he can't read defenses.
You're just mad at him.
Yeah, I am. I'm angry.
It's an easy name to forget. Don't worry.
I'm angry.
Real nice.
Exactly.
So people on YouTube are saying the same thing, that their concern isn't with him running the football, it's his ability to read defenses. And that's been a question that gets thrown around a lot with Jalen. And it's hard to tell because were things great last year? No. We've talked about how ugly the offense looked, but how much of that was on Jalen and how much of that was on not having faith in the offensive game plan, the route designs, the schemes, not completely giving an excuse to Jalen Hurts, but there was a lot at play there. It wasn't just Jalen.
Yeah, I feel like the knock on Jalen has long been his inability to read the defenses to people's, degree of expectation, I guess. Because he obviously can read a defense. You don't get to be at the level he's at where he played exceptionally high level of football at Alabama. And now, of course, he talked about benching him. Do I have to remember that he also won them a couple of games, by the way, at Alabama? He also got Oklahoma to the championship.
Yeah, and after he got benched, he came out and won the SEC championship game.
Let's, you can pick and choose what you would like to, but you have to look at the overall picture. And
let's also go back 5 years with what Tom's talking about.
Hey, remember back in high school he's a very good quarterback who had a very bad year last year. especially at the end. He was careless with the football. The offense was not creative. He had no confidence in it. There was no collaborative effort. He didn't like the offense. The offense didn't like the offense. So that's never going to work. But at the same time, you have to look at the whole picture. You can't pick and choose when you have a Jalen Hurts quibble. I get it. It's easy. You can, just like we can pull up the great stats and ignore everything else. Jalen Hurts does this, this, and this. You have to look at the whole picture, and that includes passing and running with Jalen Hurts. The other knock on him was like, well, the only reason he throws well is because he's got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. All right, so you take those. I mean, whatever. You have to take everything all into account. Jalen Hurts is a good passer. He is able to get the ball to where it needs to be, and the offense, when it looks better, the offense certainly in 2022 looked better because it was run better. Shane Steichen had a better offense. There's no question about it. Then he looks better. That's just the case for everybody. He is able to get the ball where it needs to be, and he's able to run when he needs to in a smart way. All encompassing, you have to look at the whole picture. There were bright spots last year. You think about the Bills game, a tremendous game. Of course, it was the beginning of the end, and we didn't know it at the time.
It was. You're right. It was the beginning of the end.
It was the beginning of the end. That was it. We all saw the last gasp of what that team was going to look like. But it was a great game, and Jalen looked very good in it, both running and passing. That was the best I thought the offense really looked in that stretch. They had some decent games, but it was really firing on all cylinders, and I thought he read the defense just fine in that game. That was a decent defense. He read the defense just fine in a lot of games last year. So I get that that's the argument. He has had difficulties, and that's where we were talking about the run and reading the defense. He doesn't seem to recognize it at times in the season as quickly as he should, and then that's where, he would be careless ball, he would get sacked, or he would take off running, and then the fumble would be created and everything else. And it did seem to snowball. But to say that he can't read a defense is not correct. To say that he can't get the ball where it needs to go and is not a good passer because of what you saw in the last 10 games or whatever you want to point out is incorrect. You have to look at the whole picture for him. Like, I'm not going to sit here and think that Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback just because of what he did in 2022. He's not right now. But to say that two rookies and Jalen Daniels and Caleb Williams are going to pass him because you saw something last year, I think is a little bit short-sighted.
It is. And the guy's still only 25. He'll be 26 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
Here's
Jalen Hurts. Yeah, here's more practice for you. But I want to continue that conversation because as we talk about Jalen Hurts having some difficulty reading the field at times, which is accurate, they're putting a little bit more on his plate this year. He's going to have to do some more at the line of scrimmage, and Kellen Moore spoke about that this morning. We're going to play that clip for you. But I also want to tell you about FanFest because our online ticket raid is going to be this Thursday. 97.5 The Fanatic FanFest 2024 with FanDuel is back Saturday, September 28th at Xfinity Live. Get your tickets during our next online ticket raid, Thursday, August 8th at 12 noon at 975thefanatic.com. It's the biggest party of the year for Philly sports fans. All of us hosts, celebrity guests, Philly sports legends, activities, games, prizes, so much more. 975thefanatic.com has all the info. When we get back, we'll continue the conversation about Jalen Hurts and something Kellen Moore said today that I do have some concerns about putting on Jalen's plate, but we'll talk about that coming up.
Now, a Birds Insider update on 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Yes, we are officially in week 3 of training camp for the Philadelphia Eagles and the rest.
Or do you want to see Jalen become more of a pocket passer? And we've got a lot of comments, a lot of texts, a couple of calls, and people are questioning Jalen's ability to read defenses. And you're not wrong. There's been some discussion about that he's struggled at times in reading defenses. But this year, we know there's going to be even more on his plate, Amy, because they're going to ask him to also be responsible for blitz protections at the line of scrimmage, something that Jason Kelce's done in previous years. So today, when Kellen Moore spoke right before we came on the air, he was also asked about, well, what's going to be his ability to make adjustments at the line? Are you going to give him the freedom to make adjustments at the line? This was Kellen Moore's response.
I think obviously it's a collective effort as we continue to build this thing and evolve. You want to utilize as many tools as you can while keeping them clean and clear for the entire offense. And sometimes it's not necessarily about Jalen, but it's making sure that all 11 are on the same page. And so he'll continue to have those tools. He's done an excellent job through camp of just utilizing different adjustments when he needs to, protections, routes, run game. He's doing a phenomenal job with this.
So that's Kellen Moore. If you're going to make sure that Jalen Hurts is responsible for helping call the blitz protections, then he should have the freedom at the line of scrimmage to make changes. And what I like there is he's talked about blitz protections, routes. He's going to have the freedom to make those adjustments. My only concern, Amy, as Jalen Hurts is learning a pretty new offense, new play caller, new language, new schemes, are they throwing too much at him?
It's every single year he's had new offense, new play caller. Well, hasn't had the new center. That's the only thing that's been consistent.
Yeah, now he's got a new center,
in
too.
the last 5 years of his football career. You're going back to Alabama, 2 different coordinators there, then obviously goes over to Oklahoma, obviously a new coordinator, changing schools, and then a new coordinator every year that he's been here in Philadelphia. So that's not the new aspect of it. I think when I go back to the 95% new, when Jalen had that comment, during the OTAs and the mini camp, and then Kellen Moore and Jalen walked it back a little bit, saying it's not 100%, like it's not all new, but there's 95% newness to it. And Kellen Moore kind of clarified, like it might seem newer, but it's the same kind of scheme. It's the same kind, like the looks will be similar enough. So I think that to me, and it's the fact that he's had all off season. I mean, this isn't. Do you want something like Patrick Mahomes has? Yeah. You want that consistency, but that's just not realistic. And Jalen Hurts is used to it in a certain degree. I think that is helpful. And then I think also that he has been working with it, and it's been a collaborative effort. That was one thing that we did not hear a lot last year of kind of like, oh, what's your input? What would you like to put into this? And I think that Kellen Moore has worked with, and it said multiple times over the course of this offseason, how it's been this group think of, he presents these things. Jalen Hurts, he talks to him about it. If they need a tweak, they do. And so I think that to me, I don't have a lot of qualms about him walking in thinking it's 95% new still when he takes, the first snap under center in Brazil.
Yeah, look, there could be positives to all of this. Like you were saying, it's not necessarily 95% new. And I agree with you. I don't think there's a 95% different offense in the NFL amongst any team. They all run similar stuff. But there could be a positive. My concern is, they're throwing too much at him. New offense, new center, new play caller, new schemes and all that. But with him now being responsible to a lot of people's concerns about, hey, he can't read defenses. But now he's going to be forced to, because he's going to have to come to the line of scrimmage. He's going to have to be involved in adjusting blitz protections, something that they've certainly struggled with towards the end of last year was just ridiculous against teams you knew who were bringing blitzes. So maybe there is a positive here. But as we wrap up the conversation about Jalen Hurts running, do you want Jalen Hurts to run? I know we got a few texts on that, Tom. What do we got on the text board?
Yeah, a couple texts here from people on the subject. Let's start with Colby in Central Pennsylvania. On Jalen running, he was not 100% healthy last year, and most of the time when he ran, he was running for his life rather than a design run or scramble. The O-line needs to improve and give him 3 to 4 seconds to go through his progressions and throw the ball. If people are covered, then you take off. Also need to keep some design runs in there to help keep the defense honest. Excuse me.
It's a pretty good text right there.
There you go.
Who was it?
Saying.
Colby in Central Pennsylvania.
Way to go, Colby.
Yeah, good text, Colby. Keep the design runs. There doesn't have to be, even though I gave you the numbers, when he runs the ball more than 14 times, they're undefeated. I don't want him running the ball 14 times. They have an 800 winning percentage when he runs the ball more than 10 times, but I also don't think that is a requirement either. But keep it in the game. Let defenses have to game plan for the run. But part of the reason why, Amy, in addition to maybe injuries to your starting quarterback, part of the reason why we don't want to see Jalen run too much is because of the weapons that you have on this team. And coming up, I want to get into how good A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith can actually be, because we haven't even hit the prime yet. I think we're about to start the prime of these guys' careers. So we're going to talk about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and how good they can actually be coming up next.
WPEN.fanatic.com. WPEN and WPEN HD1 Burlington, Philadelphia, a Beasley Media Group station, broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studios, powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. This is Philadelphia's sports station for breaking news. Now, more of the Midday Show. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Welcome back into Middays. Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul, Tom Alvord behind the glass. Big shout out to our YouTube family checking in today as well. Talking some Eagles. We'll get into Phillies a little bit later on. If they would have won, it would have been a nice positive conversation today. But the Fightin' Phils dropped one late last night to the LA Dodgers. Dodgers are only a half game back now, Amy. A half game back for the best record in the National League. And this is coming off 26 days ago when the Phillies swept the Dodgers. They were 6.5 up on the Dodgers. Now, not even 4 weeks later, half game. Back in action tonight.
They haven't won the opener of a series since early July.
7 straight.
A month.
7 straight series where they've lost the opening game. Well, let's talk about something better than the Phillies right now. Although I do think they're going to be okay, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. I want to talk about this wide receiver duo that the Eagles have, because everybody knows how good they are. But I'm wondering if we're actually underestimating how good they can be. Because everything we're hearing coming out of training camp is that Devontae Smith is absolutely unguardable. And this is going up against corners that we know are an upgrade from what you saw last year. Everybody's excited about Quinyon and Isaiah Rodgers. They haven't been able to guard Devontae Smith. And sometimes Devontae Smith gets lost in the shuffle because of how good A.J. Brown is. But I thought this was a great answer. Isaiah Rodgers spoke to the media after practice yesterday. And we all remember he was suspended all year last year, and he was being asked kind of differences. And he talked about how he forgot how good these guys were. Listen to Isaiah Rodgers.
I forgot really how good AJ and Devontae is. You know, I watched them throughout the year, but it's not really, it don't hit you till you're in front of them and actually have to guard them. So that's one thing.
Forgot how good they were. And the thing is that I still don't think Devontae's in his prime yet. He's just entering his 4th season. He's only 25 years old. A.J. Brown, I think, is in the middle of his prime.
Yeah.
Devontae, I think, is just getting there. How good can these guys be this season?
I mean, it's just interesting because that was the question when A.J. Brown was first. Oh, no, do you have 1 and 1A? Who's your one receiver? Well, they're both number 1 receivers, and the Eagles have never had that at all with 2 number 1 style receivers. Now, they're very different receivers. I think that for the slightness of his size, Devontae is super reliable. You throw anything, he's going to catch it if it comes his way. A.J. Brown is going to catch it just because he has that kind of range. I feel like both of them are just so sure-handed. It's got to be such a nice thing to have as a quarterback to know if you throw something in the area of those 2 guys, they're going to find it. But I feel like they're very highly regarded around the league. People know that you have those guys and how good they are. The problem with last year was that you just didn't have enough looks to vary, when they were out there with the routes and any kind of, the defenses knew what was going to happen and they knew where they were going to be. So that's when you got into trouble, and that's where they still had really good numbers. Obviously it was over 1,450 for A.J. Brown and like well over 1,000 for Devontae Smith. But I felt like it didn't look as good. Even though the numbers were just as good as the year before, it didn't look as good. The touchdowns were down for A.J. Brown. They're the exact same for Devontae Smith. But I feel like it didn't look as good. So when you think about how good these guys can be, one, I think it was great to lock. You're going to see some of these. You already saw some of them. Some of the contracts that these wide receivers are going to get next year, and it's already started, are going to be obscene, the amount of money these guys are going to garner. And to lock them down through 2028 or whatever it is, when you're looking at ahead and for the number that they got him, which is still a lot of money, you're $30 million or whatever, is crazy. But they really got quite the steal for as good as these guys are going to be, the Pro Bowl level, all pro level type of players, and to get them for what's probably going to end up being just a slightly above average pay for guys that are going to be number one receivers.
It may have been Howie Roseman's best move of the summer because the San Francisco 49ers are struggling right now.
Well, they're going to trade Aiyuk.
What's going on with Brandon Aiyuk, which I do want to talk about a little bit later. But to your point that the Eagles have never had two number one wide receivers, I think that when Donovan was here,
I would say no.
I'm not sure he even had a number one receiver, let alone two number one.
He had T.O.
He had T.O. 1 year.
Yeah, that was it.
Pretty much that one season.
James Thrash is not a number one receiver. Sorry, James.
No, he wasn't. And neither was Todd Pinkston, who's made a nice coaching career for himself.
Todd Pinkston.
Actually, we'll talk to Todd Herremans coming up at 12 o'clock about how good the wide receivers were on the teams he played for. Actually, Todd Herremans, I've talked to him about this before. His rookie season was when T.O. lost his mind and was doing sit-ups on his driveway.
Great.
That was Herremans' first year and his first experience.
Welcome to the NFL moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He goes, so I came in thinking, oh, well, the team was in the Super Bowl last year. We're going to go to the Super Bowl every season. He goes, and then I come into that, and it was an absolute disaster. But your buddy Reuben Frank, Amy, he wrote a nice article on NBC Sports Philadelphia to really put into perspective how good AJ and Devontae have already been. In 2022 and 2023, Brown and Smith each had at least 80 catches, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, and averaged 12.5 yards per catch. Mm-hmm. The only other duo from the same team to do that in consecutive seasons, you got to go back to 2012 and 2013, Eric Decker, Demaryius Thomas with the Broncos. And you know who their quarterback was that year?
My favorite quarterback of all time.
Peyton Manning. He was amazing, wasn't he?
That's not a question. I think Peyton Manning is the best. He's my favorite quarterback of all time.
Better than Brady?
I don't like Tom Brady. You're not asking me who's better. You're asking me who I like.
Oh. See, I hated Tom Brady. Let's have a little bit of a
Garbage.
side conversation here. I used to hate Tom Brady. I couldn't stand him to the point where I actually made the mistake of rooting for the Giants in that Super Bowl when they had the perfect season.
I was openly rooting for the Giants.
Well, after the clock struck zero.
Ruined that season.
And I saw the Giants and all their fans celebrate. I'm like, what did I just do?
Yeah.
How did I just root for the Patriots? My hatred quickly turned to respect for how good he actually was.
I'm not saying I don't respect him as one of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterback of all time, and the longevity and the prime that he had and the fact that he was able to do it for so long. But I don't like the man. I don't want him to have success. I don't want him to have joy. Okay, I want to have the joy. Therefore, Tom cannot have the joy. And I mean that as Tom Brady, not Tom Alford.
Yeah. Tell us how you really feel.
Catching strays today. I don't like it.
Catching strays. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. I don't like Tom Brady.
Man, tell us how you really feel, Amy.
Yeah, gross.
But you look at that. So that was the only duo back-to-back seasons to do all those things, and he includes in that the average yards per catch. Even if you remove that, the only other duos to have 80 catches, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons, TJ Houshmandzadeh and Chad Johnson with the Bengals, a.k.a. Chad Ochocinco. Mm-hmm. Still can't believe he changed his name so he could put that on his jersey.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You can.
Ochocinco. Hey, he's a big Eagles fan, though, man. He's always hyping us up.
He lost Philly.
And then Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, who's obviously a tight end with the Chiefs in 2020 and 2021. So you're talking about 3 other wide receiver / tight end combinations that have done what AJ and Devontae have done in the last 2 seasons. And AJ Brown just turned 27. Devontae Smith's only 25. And now you add Kellen Moore designing plays and route concepts for these guys.
Yeah,
sky's the limit.
Yeah, the thing is that distinguishes, when you're talking about Decker and it was Demaryius Thomas.
Demaryius Thomas, yeah.
It was the 12.5 yards per catch.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's the number that sticks out. So, because I just read the article quickly too, because you mentioned the other guys, they didn't have the 12.
They didn't have the yards per catch.
But the 12.5, that is a huge thing when you're talking about, the old school matriculate the ball down the field. Well, there's a good way to do it when you're basically getting a first down every time you throw it to more than a first down every time you throw it to either Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown. That is a huge facet of the offensive game. Those guys are extremely efficient, and it just shows you how the design of the offense, especially when it's clicking, and you will go back to 2022 or the beginning even of 2023, how well it works. It's set up by the run. It's set up by different facets in the back half of the offense. But for those guys to really be effective, you need to give them that space, and they like to be able to get those big chunk yardage. 12.5 per catch is an obscene number. That's a ridiculous number for those guys that was the average. That wasn't just like one game. That was the average for a season.
And the crazy thing is, though, they did this with what we would all say was a bad offense towards the end of the last season.
Oh, it was a bad offense.
They weren't that great towards the end of last season. I'm looking at some of the best wide receiver duos of all time in NFL history. You had Randy Moss and Chris Carter. But Chris Carter was towards the end of his career. He wasn't necessarily in his prime. They did play 48 games together. Jerry Rice and John Taylor. Randy Moss and Wes Welker. Larry Fitzgerald and Quan Bolden.
Oh, it was good too.
But Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne.
I mean, you're talking about all those teams made either the Super Bowl or at least the conference championship that you just named.
But where can these guys end up? If they stay together and they're under contract for 2028 and they stay healthy, I don't want to sound like a homer here. I'm trying to be objective. AJ and Devontae could go down as one of the best wide receiver combos in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, I would think that that's probably not they will certainly be the best wide receiver duo in an Eagles uniform. You might be able to say that sentence now.
I think you probably can.
Just because of the history of the Eagles having one great wide receiver and the second one being just okay. And that's fine. They've obviously been successful with what they've had coming into these guys. But no, I think that's if the trajectory is the same and it continues where it is, right, when you're looking at you almost had 1,500 yards 2 seasons ago and then close to it last year for A.J. Brown. And then you're having 1,100 repeatedly for Devontae Smith. Those numbers are ridiculous, and they've been consistent. You're looking at 2 seasons now. If they get there again, there's no question that you would think that they could continue that on the same trajectory. So if you have 7 years, 6 seasons of one guy getting close to 1,500 and the other guy getting 1,100, and they're both averaging about 9 touchdowns a season, like how do you not put them in that pantheon?
It's going to be fun to watch, and we'll throw that question out to you, a nice fun question. Do you think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, if they stay healthy, can be the best wide receiver duo in franchise history, or do you think they're already there, as Amy said? Because I think you may be right, Amy, they're already there. But send us a text, 610-632-0975. How excited are you for A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith this season with what we think a very good offensive coordinator? And I'm looking at the top 20 receiving yards all time in franchise history. It's crazy when you look at the amount of wide receivers on this list from 2000 forward, because there's barely any of them. That's how bad the wide receivers have been in this city. First overall is Harold Carmichael. You got to go right back to the 70s and the 80s. Deshaun Jackson, number 3 all time. He's in the 2000s. You got to keep going down the list. Brent Selleck's a tight end. Jeremy Maclin, he comes in at number 10 all time, so he's in the 2000s. Brian Westbrook was a running back. Jason Avant.
Wait, think about that. You've named a tight end and a running back before you get to a guy like Jason Avant, who is a very nice player.
And Jason Avant is 15th all time, but he's only the 3rd wide receiver in the top 20 from the 2000s. And then you have, coming in at number 20, Devontae Smith. So think about this. With how much the NFL has changed, how much more of a passing game it's been, you're telling me that in franchise history, the Philadelphia Eagles only have 4 wide receivers in their top 20 receiving yards that played in the 2000s era.
That's not surprising. You've been here. You saw it. You saw the tape.
I'm starting to...
Number 5 will always love you.
Have a lot more respect for Donovan McNabb, considering who that man had to play with.
And it made absolutely no sense to me. And now I'm glad we don't have to have these conversations anymore. But it seemed like Eagles fans, were trying to find a way to get A.J. Brown out of town at a points last year. And I'm just like, do
that
we
was
not
ridiculous.
Realize what we have right now?
Tom,
I was for granted.
I was on the air.
10 touchdowns away from us.
I was on the air that weekend when that was hitting its fever pitch.
I think I was too.
Where there was fans actually agreeing with some who were saying that they should trade A.J. Brown. And I was trying to remind people, like, do you remember what it was like here? You're trying to get rid of a guy who literally sits at number 1 and number 2 in franchise history for most receiving yards in a season, and he's done that in only 2 years that he's been here, he sits at number 1 and number 2? Ridiculous, Tom.
Yeah, I don't understand it at all. And like you mentioned, this has been such a bad city when it comes to having good wide receiver play, where Devontae Smith, who's going into his 4th season, is already top 20 all time in the franchise's leading receivers. It's ridiculous.
It really is. And I'm seeing people.
That's where we're at.
I'm seeing people in the YouTube chat checking in on some great wide receiver duos. Hines Ward and Antonio Brown.
Okay, Hines Ward, that's a quarterback.
He was. He transitioned, right?
Hines Ward's a great. Yeah, he threw a touchdown. Okay,
but did he play quarterback in college?
Yes,
or no?
for Georgia.
That's what I thought. Yeah, and then he did. He threw the ball a couple times in Steelers games.
Hines Ward was a very good wide receiver. I don't know. He was a number 1 if you look at but Antonio Brown, for a good chunk right there, was the best receiver in the league for several years and one of the best. Then he obviously went on the crazy bus, and that's fine.
Before he lost his mind, he was unbelievable.
I'm telling you, the guy was great. He obviously, when the wheels fell off, they all fell off. But yeah, that's a good duo. Hines, that was a lot of fun to watch when they were rolling, because I think that was that's an interesting offense to kind of look at, in a way that they had a solid running back. You have to go back a ways, either looking at Willie Parker or Jerome Bettis. If you go further back, Hines Ward, Antonio Brown, they had some good, and the quarterback, while not mobile, Ben Roethlisberger, not mobile, could run at times, and that was a bit of a weapon. That's an interesting Hines Ward, and I haven't thought about that duo. That's a decent duo.
And then Dylan's running our YouTube chat today. He's getting all sarcastic in the chat. Better wide receiver duo, Brown and Smith or Pinkston and Freddie Mitchell?
I was like, that's just laughable.
And then he says, what about Dorial Green, Beckham, Nelson Aguilar, and Josh Huff? Come on, Dylan. Come on.
DGB. That DGB is like answers to trivia questions.
I'm still talking myself into him having a comeback season. I was so excited for that move.
I was so happy. They traded who? Dennis Kelly?
Dennis Kelly, yep. Who's still in the league, I think.
Dennis Kelly is the guy that who was the player that they used to call up and back all the time, and he kept getting traded. Something with a V, I can't remember. He kept showing up here from the practice squad, and then all of a sudden
it may have been Dennis Kelly.
Dennis Kelly. He just keeps coming back. He's like the penny
there was
that keeps
a guy they kept bringing, a lineman you're talking about.
Yeah,
they kept bringing him back. I can't remember the name.
It's something
kind of like Jordan Matthews. How Jordan Matthews was back with the team every other year.
But I feel like Dennis Kelly, like he goes to the Titans, and then the next year he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm an Eagle again, and then he'll just go somewhere else. Oh, and now I'm with the Rams. Oh, just kidding, I'm an Eagle again. He just keeps showing up.
I thought that was Wentz's number 1 guy going forward. Jordan Green Beckham.
Jordan Matthews. So I gave you the list of the top 20 receiving yards in franchise history. Jordan Matthews is in the top 20 for receptions in franchise history, which is pretty crazy. I always felt like he was better than he got credit for.
Jordan Matthews?
Yeah, he seemed to be a little bit better than he got credit for. But look, one of the questions, though, that surrounds this team right now is because this wide receiver duo is so good, as we've been talking about, and because now you also have Jalen Hurts who can run the football, and you still have Dallas Goedert, well, you've added Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is used to being the number 1 piece, really the only piece, if we're being honest, for the Giants.
Yeah.
The only piece. So he got the ball a lot. He was the main part of that offense. So he was asked yesterday after practice, well, how are you going to handle that, sharing the ball with A.J. and Devontae? Listen to Saquon's answer.
I don't think it's hard. I mean, it's not hard at all because what's the most important thing? And that's winning football games. And I think we all have that mindset. We want to go out there and win. So we're willing to do whatever it takes to win games. And I think last time I was up here, I said there might be some games where I got to watch Devontae and AJ and Dallas and all those guys and Jalen throw the ball 40 times and throw for 400 yards. And I got to buckle up and pass pro as best as I can. And there's going to be some games I might have to carry the ball 25, 30 times. When your goal is to go out there and win and compete for a championship, and that's actually what you want to do, it doesn't matter how you get it done. And I think we have those guys that's in this locker room who share that same mindset. And when you're all playing at a high level, if you want accolades, that kind of comes along with it. But the main thing is to win football games, and I think we have that mindset here.
Man, every time I hear Saquon talk, I start to love him even more and more. But this is why it was so smart of Howie Roseman to pay everybody. Because I agree, you can say all of these things, but if you're looking for a new contract and you're not getting the ball and you're not proving that you're worthy of that next contract, even if you're winning, some adversity can set in. Saquon got paid. AJ got paid. Devontae got paid. So, yeah, now they could focus on, I don't care if I get the ball. Let's just win football game.
And I think that that's the aspect that, will make this team. We talked about, gelling and everybody coming together. When you're having, hard times, you have to be able to rely on each other. and we mentioned it yesterday. These guys having fun and canceling practice if you make a shot and whatever else, and driving the golf cart around and whatever else. Like, it's a long season. It is a grind. And so when things go sideways, you have to be able to rely on your brother. And I know that that's like cliche, but there's a reason it's a cliche, because these guys are in the trenches with each other. They're all up in each other's business. That's why you see those training camp fights every now and again, because you do get very close and, tempers flare and whatever else. But you have to be able to go back and at the core know that everybody's there for the same goal. You're all on the same page. You all have the same voice, and everything is together, because things always go sideways. They're always, even when you're winning, like they were in that 10-1, things weren't great. The team didn't look like they were a 10-1 team. I don't think they looked like a 1-6 team at the end when they were the 10-1 team, but that's apparently who they were. But you have to be able to rely on the fact that everybody's all in this together. We all want the same goal, and no matter what happens at the end of the day, that's what's important.
And the Philadelphia Eagles, we love the wide receiver duo they have. Well, an NFC rival may not have a very good wide receiver duo after today, because one of their stars may be getting traded. Thank you, Howie Roseman, for making sure you took care of these wide receivers, because this team's going through a little bit of a headache right now. We're going to get into that coming up next.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Training camp continues. I'm Tom Atwood, and this update is brought
Coming up at 2, the best show ever with Tyrone Johnson and Ricky Vitalico. Right now, it's the Midday Show. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Bill Colarulo, Amy Fadul, Tom Albert behind the glass with you today on Middays. Talking about the Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver duo of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And with how young they are and entering their prime, well, A.J.'s in it, but Devontae, I think, is just getting there. Is when we look at NFL history, how good can this duo actually be when we look at the best duos in history? But then when we take a look across the country and we go over to San Francisco, how smart was it of Howie Roseman to take care of Devontae Smith before the wide receiver market blew up, to extend A.J. Brown before he even had to? Because it looks like, Amy, Brandon Aiyuk is probably going to get traded within the next 24 hours. The report that came out last night, the 49ers have negotiated the frameworks for deals with the Browns and the Patriots for their disgruntled wide receiver. That's according to Matt Miyako of NBC Sports Bay Area reporting. It's now up to Brandon Aiyuk and his agent to work out a long-term contract with one of those two teams. This is incredible news if you're an Eagles fan, because not only does this weaken the San Francisco 49ers, Aiyuk is not getting traded to the Washington Commanders, as we thought was a possibility to start the year. He was pushing the play with Jaden Daniels. This is just, I think the impact that this is going to have on the 49ers is a lot more than some are giving it credit.
Do you?
I think it's huge.
They still have Christian McCaffrey, so I'm always hesitant to discount them in any way, shape, or form because he is just such an incredible weapon. I don't ever want to call him a wide receiver because he is
he's
just
amazing.
Such a dynamic
I'm
player.
with you on that.
They still have Deebo Samuel, last I checked. So Brandon Aiyuk is a really talented wide receiver. I had saw the first report that he was interested in being traded. I think the Steelers were in on him. I know we're talking about Steelers earlier with Hines Ward, and his alternate counterpart was Antoine Randall L., not Antonio Brown. But
yes,
two former quarterbacks, ironically. But I thought that it was interesting that he wanted to go to a place where he's familiar. And I remember the Commanders was a name that had come up, and then now you're seeing the Patriots and the Browns. And he's obviously a very talented receiver. And so when you think about that offense and how much more dynamic it is with him in it, it's obviously helpful. There's no question about it. But I don't think it's detrimental to them.
Well, we were talking
as much
about.
As I would like it to be.
We were talking about average yards per catch earlier when we looked at Devontae and AJ. Last season, Brandon Aiyuk averaged 18 yards per reception. And that's not with limited catches. That's 75 catches, 1,342 yards, 18 yards per catch. See, here's the reason why I think this is going to be a massive loss for the San Francisco 49ers. And if you want to get in, send us a text. How big of a loss will Brandon Aiyuk be for the 49ers? 610-632-0975. Deebo Samuel, as good as he is, and Christian McCaffrey, as good as he is, they don't take the lid off of a defense the way Brandon Aiyuk does. He opens up everything underneath for them to be able to get the ball to their playmakers in space so Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel can do what they do, and even George Kittle. I'm telling you, this is a huge loss, and they know it's a huge loss. This is why they didn't trade him at the draft when they would have probably got maximum compensation in return. They've been trying to get a contract extension, and to Ayuk's credit, held his guns, showed up, did a hold in, not a hold out, so he's not getting fined. But you're not the only one, Amy, who thinks maybe it's not going to be as big of a deal, because Jeff McClain joined our morning show this morning. And I was on my way in listening to Jeff McClain, who does a great job covering the Eagles for the Inquirer. And I'm sitting in my car disagreeing as much as I possibly could disagree when you're by yourself, listening to what McClain said about Aiyuk. Listen to this.
It's just one player, and I think receivers to some extent are overvalued. If you look at Super Bowl winners and teams that have continually been, thriving, look, they have receivers there. They have a lot of weapons. Christian McCaffrey is probably the most important person on that offense, and Kyle Shanahan is a genius schematically in play calling. So I don't think it really makes much of a movement, makes much of a tremor in the NFC, if you're really asking me the truth.
Could not disagree more with Jeff McClain there. Amy, and it sounds like you're more in agreement that it's only one player.
I would hesitate to say anything as there's no way it's detrimental to their offense because he's gone. And that's only because they have two unbelievable players. Brandon Aiyuk was, I thought, the person that he led that team in receiving yards, almost 1,400 last year. He seemed to be on the same page as Brock Purdy. But the thing, and your point about taking the top off of defense is a long threat like that does open up more stuff over the middle and these kind of cushion, these 7-8 yard gains that you would maybe have Deebo Samuel for. But that's going to discount Deebo Samuel or CMC, which I would never do. I feel like that is a very well-run offense. I think that they are very well-timed and well-oiled machines. So, yes, you're taking a key cog out, but the cogs that are left still are going to be able to make that engine hum pretty well.
They are. And look, I think Kyle Shanahan is a great offensive mind. He knows how to design plays to really take advantage of his weapons. But when you remove a 1,300-yard receiver who is averaging that many yards per reception from any offense, it's going to have an impact. And we saw how much the Super Bowl hangover can affect a team last year. Mm-hmm. Well, now you got the San Francisco 49ers. They got as close as you can possibly get, literally as close as you could possibly get to winning. They scored in overtime and lost. That's something that, going back a few years, would have been the game-ending field goal. They would have won the Super Bowl. They got as close as you possibly could. So now they're coming back from a Super Bowl hangover. They fire their defensive coordinator, who I think really called a hell of a game against Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. But they fired him. Now you lose arguably your best wide receiver. I think he's better than Deebo Samuel. I know Deebo Samuel can do some other things in the running game. He's kind of an interchangeable piece with Christian McCaffrey. They're almost the same guy. But Christian McCaffrey, I think, is more talented. But they are the same type of player.
Christian McCaffrey should have won the MVP last year. And that is a hill I will die on.
I agree with you. And it's a shame because it's
a quarterback
always a quarterback. Always a quarterback.
Whatever.
But I look at this 49ers team, and I think everyone would agree, if we're looking at the NFC as a whole, they're the number one dog in the NFC. They're the team that you have to beat. Yes, the Lions are going to be good. The Packers should be good. I think the Cowboys are going to be terrible. We're going to look at updated odds a little bit later on in the show. But the 49ers are the team you need to knock off. I'm feeling pretty good that this team that we're trying to catch is losing their best wide receiver.
I think it's still, you can still be, pleased about it. It's not good to lose a receiver that's the number one in that offense. I don't think it's going to derail the Niners, but I think that they will have to adjust, in a different way. They'll have to have someone else step up because not everybody will be as open as they were when you have a threat like Brandon Aiyuk out there. It's like all of a sudden if there wasn't Devontae Smith or there wasn't A.J. Brown, like, okay, well now you're a little bit less dynamic. Your offense is becoming a little bit more one note or two notes in this case. And there's George Kittle, very nice tight end, right? There's no question about that. He'll have to be more involved. CMC is exceptionally dynamic, and then you have a great receiver in Deebo Samuel, and so now you have one less weapon, so you become a little bit less dynamic. I don't think that it changes their trajectory. I don't think the odds are going to drop them like they're not a Super Bowl contender now, right? I think they're probably still going to be right up there, but yeah, you definitely think, okay, well maybe they're a little bit more vulnerable.
And we didn't even mention, though, and I just looked to see because I believed he was still holding out. Their left tackle, Trent Williams, hasn't reported
Correct.
yet either.
He wants it.
I mean, the 49. You look at this Eagles training camp, and we talked about this yesterday. You got to take everything with a grain of salt as far as how good people are playing. Nick Sirianni said, it's never as good as you think, it's never as bad as you think. But he's talking about what's happening on the field. There are zero distractions right now, knock on wood that continues, with the Philadelphia Eagles. This is an amazing training camp from that respect. Everybody seems to be on the same page, working for the same goal. You go to San Francisco, new defensive coordinator because he took the heat for what happened in the Super Bowl, even though he shouldn't have. Dealing with the Super Bowl hangover. Now probably going to lose your number one wide receiver. One of the best, if not the best left tackle in the game, Trent Williams, is holding out. There's a lot of things surrounding that 49ers team. Is it too much for them to overcome? All of it, though, is good news for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, there's anytime you can take away a dynamic weapon from a team that you view as your path to the Super Bowl, I think is going to be helpful. I don't think it's going to derail the Niners season. I don't think that their odds to be in the NFC Championship are going to change drastically, if at all, from not having Brandon Aiyuk, but their offense becomes less dynamic. They become, more of a vulnerable team because they don't have that deep threat that they had before. But they do still have Deebo Samuel, who is still going to be in the top 10 of receiving, and they have Christian McCaffrey, who is the most dynamic running back in the NFL, and maybe one of the most dynamic running backs I've ever seen in NFL history, which obviously I haven't watched 100 years of the NFL, but in my eyeballs, I've never seen a guy quite like him.
Yeah, he is one of a kind. It is impressive, and we'll see what shakes out there, but certainly it's going to impact them, but how much is yet to be determined. And as soon as we get news on that, we'll let you know, because that trade looks like there's a framework there but hasn't been finalized as to who he's going to. But this whole conversation about wide receivers started with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, talking about if this nucleus can stay together, if this duo can stay together, could they go down as being one of the best in NFL history? And I think we got some text on that, Tom.
We do. That is correct. So we had Pete in Allentown who talks about both Jalen Hurts running the ball and some of the best wide receiver duos. He goes, yes, Jalen Hurts should be running the ball in this offense, but keep it to around 5 plays a game in the right situation to keep the defense on the edge. Let's not overdo it. He also says Mark Duper and Mark Clayton were pretty damn good.
Oh.
Going back. What year was Mark Duper and Mark Clayton? Let's see. Mark Duper played in the 80s to 90s, so 1982 to 1992. I'm assuming their quarterback was Marino back then, probably.
Well, yeah, Marino was in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so that would have been Marino. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
83. So
he also says, I do think this duo could be great or greater if they progress and win a Super Bowl, which neither of those teams did.
Man, they came one half away from already putting one. I still have nightmares about Super Bowl 57, man. Up 10 at the half. Everything looked like it was going your way. A.J. Brown was dominant in that game. Man, that one still hurts. That one still hurts. But we'll keep talking about this Philadelphia Eagles offense because, coming up at noon, we're going to have Todd Herremans join the show. Can't wait to talk to him. This is a guy who played under Andy Reid. So you talk about tough training camps. Todd Herremans lived it. I want to hear from him what he thinks of this softer training camp that they have now in the NFL, especially with Nick Sirianni, and should NFL players play in the preseason? But coming up next, NFL.com wrote an article, actually CBS Sports for NFL. CBS Sports wrote an article ranking the 2024 all off-season additions team. So they put together every single position who was the best off-season addition, and 2 Philadelphia Eagles made the list. We'll talk about that coming up next.
Kincade and Salciunas, weekday morning 6 to 10. Conversations that will make you
Phil Colarulo, Amy Fadul, along with Tom Hubbard behind the glass with you today on Middays. Talking about this Eagles offense, we heard from Kellen Moore this morning. Some good stuff from him. A lot of head coach speak. He doesn't give you as much as you get from Vic Fangio.
It's like seasoned head coach speak because it's like, I'm not telling you anything. Because sometimes new head coaches will give you a little bit, but no, he doesn't give you. It's fine.
Yeah, it's funny
Very
because
coach-speaky.
Sean Rodman does a great job back there cutting up these sounds for us right after the press conferences. And yesterday, Vic Fangio, we got all these nice long clips, great, honest. He comes in with the Kellen Moore and everything's like 18 seconds, 20 seconds. And you read them and he gave us pretty much nothing throughout his entire press conference.
And they don't even clip it down. That's just the answer is that long, which is great because, in television, in my other job, you want guys to talk in these 20-second sound bites because you can get like five answers in there for your, whatever minute and a half piece.
Well, you want them to give you something of substance.
A little substance is helpful as well. Like, yeah, you have to, like you mentioned it earlier, Bill, you have to like kind of not read between the lines, but you infer a little bit of what he's saying. When we were talking about the collective effort of what he's looking for from Jalen Hurts and about running, and you're trying to like read into it, and which leads to more questions and leads to more kind of generic answers. It's a never-ending cycle.
It is. But hey, we're happy to have you here, Kellen. Even though we don't love your press conferences, we're happy to have you here.
Produce on the field, I could care less what you say.
Exactly. And he's going to have an off-season addition on that team that we're hoping is going to make a huge impact. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey earlier. A lot of people are hoping that Saquon Barkley has a similar impact on this Eagles offense. And CBS Sports, Cody Benjamin yesterday, they put together their 2024 NFL all off-season additions team. So they looked at every single position and put the best off-season addition at each. When you look at their offense, the biggest running back off-season addition in the entire NFL, Saquon Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles.
I mean, and I'm sure you watched it. I know a lot of people out there probably did as well. The HBO off-season Hard Knocks or whatever they call it.
It was like must-watch TV. I loved it.
There's no way a team will ever do that again. I feel like it was too much behind the curtain.
It was terrible. If you're the Giants, why would you allow all that to get out?
Awful. And I'm thinking, you gave them they must have edited some of it out, but HBO probably said we have to keep some of it.
Yeah.
Watching the whole Barkley thing transpire, knowing how it ended up, and then I don't think that he's going to set the market. I don't think this, and then Mara coming in and being like, I can't imagine if he goes to the
I'm going to lose sleep if Saquon goes to Philly.
Holy smokes. Oh, I don't think the offers are out there. And I thought the whole time thinking, every team is watching this being, you know what we're never signing up for is this. We're never doing an off-season
I can't believe
version.
they agreed to it.
No.
Unbelievable.
I don't want to see the Eagles ever do that.
There's no benefit. What benefit do you get from it?
I mean, it's hella entertaining, but there is no benefit.
I hope that's not how my front office is planning on doing things, just being entertaining.
It was extremely entertaining, but not only what happened with Saquon, Amy, we know that they're not sold on Daniel Jones. I mean, you didn't have to really see it to know it, but now the fact that it's right in front of you.
They have children coming in and recognizing that it's not good for Daniel Jones.
Joe Shane's son saying it.
You know who you should take as a quarterback because yours is terrible.
Yours sucks, Dad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the Giants, though, did make this list for the 2024 NFL all offseason edition, and that was their wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, who you saw them very high on in that Hard Knocks. But here's the offenses that they put together. This is the offense for the off-season additions team. Quarterback Caleb Williams for the Bears. Running back Saquon Barkley for the Eagles. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs to the Texans. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Really big.
That was good.
Wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Cardinals. Malik Neighbors for the Giants.
I love that the offseason for them is a draft pick.
Yes, it's draft picks.
Which is fine. It's a very good draft pick, but...
Now, here's an interesting one. Well, tight end Brock Bowers for the Raiders, but left tackle Tyron Smith to the Jets. The reason why that's interesting is because what team did he come from? The Dallas Cowboys. Mm-hmm. You look at the Cowboys, I don't think they've upgraded anywhere, and they certainly have gotten worse in a lot of places.
And their defense was always decent. I think that they've had some times where they're like, all right, that's a decent defense. But they didn't make any improvements on that end.
And they lost their DC.
Exactly. So like, I feel like they maybe took a step back. I think their secondary is also a little bit questionable back there. And then you look at the offense and think, okay, well, you didn't make any improvements on that front as a whole. Your running back is fine. You're okay. Dak Prescott, whatever. But also you have to remember there's a lot of lame duck contracts down there.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have
sure.
Jerry Jones coming out and be like, oh, no, we're going to get on the same page. And Dak Prescott being like, yeah, I've asked for a contract. That'd be really great.
Yeah, and
Here I am.
You have their wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, their best defensive player, and Micah Parsons. But to complete the list, Jonah Jackson went from the Lions to the Rams. Lloyd Cushenberry, the center, went from the Broncos to the Titans. Kevin Zeitler from the Ravens to the Lions. And Joe Alt, drafted out of Notre Dame to the Chargers. That was the all offseason addition for the offense. There was also an Eagles player on the defense. Unfortunately, he didn't practice today. Safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Everything we're hearing so far is it doesn't look to be serious, but he did have to sit out today with a shoulder injury. But he's on the list at safety as being one of the best safeties. The other one, former Giant Xavier McKinney, that went to the Packers. I really liked Xavier McKinney. That was a player I was hoping the Eagles were going to try to get.
That's a good player. I mean, I like that there's only 2 draft picks on that entire list, and everybody else has actual offseason acquisitions. No offense. But I think that says a lot what those front offices are doing.
And another player that made this list for the all offseason additions is Hassan Reddick for the Jets. But is he even going to be an offseason addition at this point? Still sitting out.
Still hanging out. He's an offseason in transition. He's a transitional guy. He's not there yet.
Frankie Lavu made the list, linebacker for the Commanders. Patrick Queen going from the Ravens to the Steelers.
That was a nice pick.
Terrion Arnold, the cornerback for the Lions, who got drafted right after Quinyon Mitchell.
I think wherever Aiyuk goes, I think that it'll be
that'll be the biggest offseason addition.
The Browns or whomever.
So it'll be interesting to see if he does in fact go to the Browns, and we'll keep monitoring this. Do they include Amari Cooper in the deal back? Is there a chance that the Niners would then take on Amari Cooper's contract? We'll have to monitor that and see how all that goes. But look, it's not bad for the Philadelphia Eagles any way you slice it. How much of an impact the Brandon Aiyuk trade could have on the 49ers is yet to be determined, but they certainly don't get better. Just how much worse do they get? Amy doesn't think it's going to be as much of a drop-off as I think it's going to be, but either way, no matter how you slice it, certainly they're not better. But coming up next, I'm very excited. We're going to be joined by Todd Herremans, former Philadelphia Eagle, to talk to him about all things Eagles, training camp, the preseason. Keep it here. Todd Herremans coming up next.
Fanatic Sports Up. and WPEN HD1, Burlington, Philadelphia. A Beasley Media Group station. Broadcasting live from the Comcast Business Studios. Powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. Coming up at 2, the best show ever with Tyrone Johnson and Ricky Vitalico. Right now, it's the Midday Show. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Welcome back into Middays. Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul today. Tom Albert behind the glass. Talking a lot of Eagles this morning. They just finished their practice on the practice field. Hour 40 minutes, Amy.
All right.
That's a pretty long practice for Nick Sirianni.
Yeah.
And I say long practice, and our guest who's going to join us now is probably thinking, that's not a long practice. I used to practice under Andy Reid. So we're now going to go to the Comcast Business Hotline to talk to my man Todd Herremans. Todd, what's going on, my brother?
What's up, Bill? How you doing, man? Hey, Amy, how you doing?
Hey, Todd. Good to talk to you.
You too, guys.
So, Todd, we're talking about practice. We're talking about training camp, and there's been a lot of chatter about are Sirianni's practices too easy. You had some easy practices back in the day with Andy, didn't you, during training camp?
Yeah, on our off days we had easy practice.
So what would you prefer as a player?
I don't know. I don't think any players really like a grueling 3-hour practice in pads. So I would imagine anybody that's out there is happy to see those gone. I think it's all about what you can get done in the time that you're out there. You know, like if you're on it, if there's not a lot of down periods throughout the practice and stuff, and you're constantly, getting done with what you need to get done, I don't think you need to be out there that long, to be honest. It seems to be kind of the trend, shortening practices up a little bit, leaning towards the players' safety and, not wearing them down as much anymore. But that's not how it was once upon a time, as we all know.
Once upon a time, you guys were up at Lehigh, sleeping in those tiny little dorm rooms and having 2-a-days. It's a little different now there, Todd. It's a little different.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, you can't help but think that, that helped build character.
Agreed.
And also team bonding, all the things that you get about going away and, being locked up with these guys and stuff. But, I'm sure that there's, benefits galore to what they're doing right now. I think it's probably a lot more comfortable for them. Their bodies are probably in better shape and taken care of better. So, it's there's positives everywhere, there's negatives everywhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, and with the new CBA, they don't allow them to practice probably as much as you guys did, but it's a coach's decision on whether or not his starters play in the preseason, something that Sirianni hasn't done a lot of in the past. As a player, what are your thoughts about whether or not you should play in the preseason?
I think that's it's tough because some guys feel they don't need it, some guys do. I mean, I never wanted to play in the preseason, but there were some times where I saw limited action in the preseason and I felt like I needed more once the season rolled around. I mean, there is some rust that needs to be knocked off, and a lot of that happens during training camp practices and stuff, especially, if the coach lets you get some live periods in and stuff. But there's nothing like, getting out there against a different colored uniform and actually, having a game speed before you actually get to the regular season. I always felt that was, very valuable. Now, I don't know if it needs to be 3 games, 2 games. I think you can get it done with, probably less than 4 quarters of football of game speed. But I thought Andy had a good system, where the first week we played the first series, second week we played a quarter, and then the start of the second quarter, and then the third week it was the first half, I think, and then the fourth week they didn't play at all. I know now they're cut down to 3 weeks, but I thought that was a nice introduction, and then enough of a break before the season started.
Yeah, and to your point, there's probably some guys that feel like they need it, and other guys, they feel like they're probably ready. Like A.J. Brown probably feels like he's probably good to go. I got to ask you about your bread and butter, and of course that's the offensive line. You played tackle, you also played guard in there, and you look at a guy like Mekhi Becton, who's trying to kind of refine his I don't know. I don't want to say career because I feel like that's a little short-sighted on my part. But a guy that's trying to get back to where a lot of people expected. A former first-round pick and coming over, and now has been thrust into that guard spot after playing tackle. Now with the injury to Steen, how hard is that transition when you're trying to do it kind of on the fly, like what we're seeing with Becton now in camp?
Well, I think that one of the things he has on his side is he's going from outside to in rather than inside out. I think that it's a lot harder of a transition to go from guard to tackle than it is from tackle to guard, just because going from a confined space to somewhere with space, it's just tough. You feel like you have a lot more ground to cover, and you're just out in the open. Now, when you move from tackle to guard, I think it's a little bit easier, but then, in contrast to what I just said, like when you're working in a confined space, you might see him overset the defensive tackle a couple times and get edged, just because he's used to moving so much more than he needs to inside. But I think he'll be fine. Essentially, you just want athletes out there that are strong, can move, and play well together. So I think that, I think that he'll be fine with the transition. It's like I said, I think it's a lot harder going from inside to outside than it is outside in.
We're talking to former Philadelphia Eagle Todd Herremans on the Comcast Business Hotline. Todd, as we're talking about the offensive line, your good buddy Jason Kelce's not there calling the blitz protections anymore. So now it's going to be a combination between Jalen Hurts and Cam Jurgens. How difficult is that on a quarterback and a new center?
Well, see, I think it'd probably be new if he hadn't been in getting any reps. If he was a rookie this year, that'd probably be a lot more questions about it. But the fact that Cam's not in his first year, he's been out there, he's been in practices, he's been taking snaps and stuff, and then he has this whole offseason to prepare. It's not like they were, hanging in the wind waiting on some big decision of whether Jason was going to be back. I think Jason, it was nice that he gave him enough time to figure out, like, hey, Cam needs to get in there and be the guy now. So I don't think that the transition is going to be hard. Obviously, it's hard to replace Jason's, shoes. It's hard. He's got big shoes to fill. And I don't think that Cam's going to try to be Jason. I think he's going to be his own player, which is what he needs to do. And as long as he's able to, be knowledgeable out there and see what he needs to see, then they'll be all right.
How much would you have enjoyed being coached by a guy like Jeff Stoutland, Todd?
I did get coached by Stout.
Toward the end.
Years.
Yeah, toward the end. Do you think it would have changed? Yeah, like because there's a lot of guys that feel like if they had gotten him earlier, when you talk to some of them, that maybe things could have gone differently.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to think about that too much. I talk to people about my career path. It seemed to fit what I needed at that point in my career. Like when I had Juan, he was your classic overworker, constantly just out grinding. And that's what I needed is like a raw Division II O-lineman coming in. And then when Howard Mudd came in, I was a settled, a starter at that point. It was kind of in a good spot in my career. And Howard came in and he wasn't like about overworking the vets. And he was like, if you know what you're doing, then just do it. You don't need to, drill it into the ground. And so I liked that. And then Stoutland came in when I kind of needed an extra boost toward the end of my career, and maybe if he came earlier, I would have had a little bit more of a who knows.
Point,
I don't always play that game.
That's a good point. Like Howard Mudd, though, I think people discounted what he was, and that was a good fit for what those guys needed, including you at the time.
Yeah, we were a very veteran O-line, and we had Danny Watkins and Jason. Those two guys, and he focused on trying to develop the young guys and didn't try beating the old guys into the ground, which is. It was a great fit at the time.
And Todd, you obviously played with Donovan McNabb, who ran a lot more early in his career and then developed into more of a pocket passer. Jalen Hurts, there's some who don't want to see him run the football as much. Where are you on Jalen and design runs with the quarterback?
Man, I think that's such a good part of his game and such an awesome weapon to have. I would hate to shut it down just out of, like, fear. But I understand the concern people have, but I just feel like that's part of his game, and you don't want to limit his game at all. That's what makes him great. That's what makes him hard to defend is that he has all these options. And if you start shutting one of those things down, you just, you're kind of you're letting defenses off the hook with something that could be exposing them.
You see a guy like Jordan Mailata who took up football very recently. When you think about
so jealous of Jordan Mailata, man.
It's just ridiculous. But the offensive line has not been a concern for a large part of this, very good Eagles run. You're going back better part of a decade, really, when you think about it. And I think that's been the case going forward. There are some question marks now with Becton versus Steen, and Steen being out with injury, and then obviously Cam Jurgens being able to fill the large shoes of Jason Kelce. You've been in situations where you've had pieces come in and come out. How hard is that transition, or is it easier because these guys have been there in some capacity before?
Well, I think a lot of it's easy because of who we were talking about a minute ago, Jeff Stoutland. Mm-hmm. He is he's the conductor of the whole thing. He puts it together, makes sure guys are prepared, makes sure guys are playing together and on the same page. And I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, just because you have such a good chief in him. I think that also the fact that Becton is more of a vet, I think that helps out, going in there. But yeah, I don't think that the transition is going to be that big of a deal this year. Like I said, it's impossible to fill Kelce's shoes, the type of player and person he was. But I don't think you have to replace him to go forward and have an elite O-line.
Todd,
and the good thing is on the years where you're thinking about a transition to the O-line, it's like even if it falls off a little bit, you're still an excellent O-line in other teams. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like it could be a downgrade for Philly for a year, but it's still better than the majority of the league.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And before I let you run, today we were talking about how good this wide receiver duo can be between A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and then we started looking at some of the best wide receivers in Eagles franchise history. Terrell Owens' name came up, and I remember a conversation you and I had. Your rookie season was the year T.O.'s doing sit-ups on his driveway, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a wild year.
How was that as an introduction to the NFL, man?
Well, it was crazy because that was also the same year that we got into a brawl before the Atlanta game down in Atlanta. I think Ike was down there running his mouth.
Yeah, he got kicked. Somebody got kicked out, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think Trot had to sit out that game.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that was that, along with all the circus that was surrounding, like, T.O. and Andy and Donovan that year, was my first year in the NFL, and I was like, this is crazy. But then at the same time, I had to, check myself, and I'm like, maybe this is how it is on every team every year in the NFL. I had no clue. But, yeah, it was nice to see the next year. It wasn't quite the same.
I got to ask, do you still have the black van?
No, I had to get rid of it.
That was always
I have
the start
a Sprinter van now. It's a little more family-friendly.
Family friendly. It has windows in the back. I do miss the black. That was the start of camp for me when I saw that thing.
Well,
yeah, it was a good time in the van.
Well, we appreciate you making time. And are you and Trey doing your thing again?
Yeah, we're gonna be starting season 2 coming up here. I think we're playing around with the idea of going live every day after the game this year. So,
all right.
Yeah, stay tuned for more info on that.
All right, Todd, we appreciate you, my man. You have a good one. So that's Todd Herremans, former Philadelphia Eagle, joining us on the Comcast Business Hotline. So some interesting things in there. I said, you had some easy practices under Andy Reid. He said, yeah, our off days.
A lot different back then. Across the league.
3-hour practices, and you and I were celebrating about an hour and 40 from Nick Sirianni today.
It's a long one. Because compared to last year, these are long. They're almost double. They're more than double. Some of the practices last year would be like 50 minutes.
Well, Sirianni has said they want to focus more on conditioning. Mm-hmm. And Jeff McClain, who joined today on the morning show, was on last week like he is every week. And he talked about how some of them thought that was part of the issues down the stretch last year was a lack of conditioning.
All hit a wall.
I think it was a little bit more than that. I think it was a lot more
There was
than
a
just
lot of
conditioning.
reasons. That was one of them. A lot of reasons, I would think.
But it was interesting because there's now some chatter. Should the starters play on Friday night? Should they not? We talked about it yesterday. I don't want to see any of them play. And Todd said, look, some players think they do need it. He personally never wanted to play in the preseason. My concern is if you're going to have a banged up offensive line, don't put Jalen back there. Because do you really want to see Jalen take an unnecessary hit because Mekhi Becton and Tyler Steen both are out, and you have a Trevor Keegan, a rookie right guard in there?
Yeah, I would think that the injuries are going to dictate what you do in that game as far as on Friday and then going forward at any point in the offseason. Todd laid it out how it used to be. Starters, absolutely first preseason game. Second preseason game, maybe a smidge. Third preseason game and fourth preseason game for sure. Most of them not. Third preseason game, you might see guys that were fighting for spots, as far as like in the rotation that they were going to make the team. And the fourth preseason game is just special teamers and guys hoping to get tryouts for other teams.
Amy, I used to work for the Eagles, and that fourth preseason game would always be against the New York Jets every single year. Mm-hmm. And it was usually a night game, and there were no starters dressed. When I tell you how torturous it was to be on the sidelines for those games, I mean, by the time the fourth quarter came around, nobody was there. Nobody's in the building. It was not fun. That was certainly not fun. Now, interestingly, though, we did ask Todd about what's going to happen with this offensive line. You asked him about Mekhi Becton trying to transition to guard. He didn't seem to think it was that big of a deal.
He thought going outside to in was much easier, which makes sense when you think about the assignments and what you're responsible for. It's obviously different, but I would think it would be a lot different if you're going inside to out. The assignments would change much more drastically.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Now, obviously, Mekhi Becton hasn't been practicing, and neither has Tyler Steen for whatever reason. Was Becton on the practice field today, Tom? Do you know?
I believe he was, yes. I think the only people that missed, names that missed, were Oren Burke, CJ GJ, and there was one more, I believe.
I'm looking for
Harris Campbell.
I'm looking for
Harris Campbell again.
Yeah, missed again.
Just go ahead and put Britton Covey in there.
No, not Britton Covey. A lot of people want Johnny Wilson.
Oh, it's weird. Kellen Moore was asked about Britton Covey.
Yeah, Mekhi Becton had an illness. He was limited today. What did Kellen say about Britton Covey?
Number 8.
Do we have that clip?
Yeah. Just because, he had talked about, Britton Covey had talked about copying Cole Beasley.
Interesting. You have that clip, Tom, number 8? So let's listen to Kellen Moore on Britton Covey.
Yeah, certainly. Cole was an awesome player, obviously in Dallas. I played with him, and then when I transitioned to coaching, he was still playing there. And so Britt's done an awesome job. He's done a phenomenal job. He's taken advantage of opportunities, and like a number of these receivers, we're really excited about the depth that we have there. These guys have done a nice job of hopping in there, taking advantage of situations, and it's going to be a collective group, and we'll utilize all these guys. It's a long season. You need them all.
So here's what's interesting.
You need them all.
And Kellen Moore is talking about Britton Covey, who you just mentioned, maybe is that wide receiver 3. We've also heard about Johnny Wilson doing a great job, rookie, 6th-round draft pick. He's turning a lot of heads. Maybe he's the wide receiver 3. Britton Covey's 5'8", Johnny Wilson's 6'6".
Britton Covey's been here in the NFL before. Johnny Wilson is a rookie, and you want him to be your 3rd wide receiver.
I just think it's interesting I just think it's interesting that we're talking about the same position for literally a guy who is an entire foot shorter. More than that. What's 5'8" to 6'6"? Is that a foot?
No, it's less than a foot.
What is happening right now?
I'm trying to do the math.
You understand?
It's less than a foot.
5 feet, 6 feet.
5'8"
so
to 6'8" would be a foot.
Correct.
Yes.
5 feet.
So we're talking 10 inches.
6
Correct.
feet.
We're talking 10 inches. Why do I think that's going to get?
Math is hard for Bill today.
Math is hard. Hey, I was an attorney, not a mathematician, okay?
Okay.
I was an attorney.
5 feet, 6 feet.
But it is funny, though, that we're talking about the same position for drastically different style receivers.
I love that, Johnny Wilson is blowing it up, and he's 6'6", and that you're enamored by the size of it. He's a 6th-round pick.
For a reason.
There's nothing wrong with being a 6th-round pick, but he was a 6th-round pick when? This year.
Yeah. Yeah, he's still
He's not a 6th-round pick from 5 years ago, and he's really worked his way up.
How many catches does Britton Covey have in his career in the regular season? We're not exactly talking about.
No, exactly. I don't like that these are our 3rd wide receiver options.
You can do a little bit better.
Now, Andrew DeCecco, who joined us yesterday and does a great job covering the Eagles for us. Make sure you tune in tonight, 6 o'clock, Birds Insider Report, like it is every weeknight. He's talked about how good, though, Britton Covey has looked in training camp, that he's very difficult to guard. He's very shifty. In his 2 seasons, I don't think he has a single catch.
Great.
No, he does.
3.
He does. He had no catches his rookie year, and you ready for this? Huge season last year for Britton Covey. 4 catches, 42 yards.
Reliable.
Very reliable.
Best punt returner in the league.
Yeah. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith missed 1 game. I'm freaking out with those guys as my 3 and 4.
Yeah,
not
it's
ideal.
Not good.
But
it's not good.
If he can turn into Cole Beasley, well, now we're on to something.
Well, he'll have to grow a bit to turn into Cole Beasley as well.
Yeah,
Just a little bit.
Well, no, Beasley was 5'8".
I thought he was 5'10".
He's, according to this that I'm on now, 5'8", 174.
Oh, there you go. I thought he was taller than that.
But you know what Britton Covey would be really good at?
Punt returns?
Flag football, Tom. So when we get back, I want to talk about this flag football because the NFL put out a video yesterday that starred our very own Jalen Hurts talking about flag football in the Olympics. Could the NFL players be fighting for a gold medal in a couple of 4 years since we're in the Olympics now? We'll talk about that coming up next.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Week 3 of training camp. I'm Tom Matborn, and this update is brought to you by the Empire.
reaction. This is 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. This is Philadelphia's sports station for breaking news. Now, more of the Midday Show. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
This 12 o'clock hour on The Fanatic is brought to you by Service First Heating and Air Conditioning. Get 0% financing for 72 months and a $500 rebate when you purchase a complete heating and cooling system from Service First. Learn more now at servicefirsthvac.com. Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul today. Amy, yesterday we were on air when a new video broke online of our very own Jalen Hurts, not only representing the NFL, but representing the United States of America.
Captain America.
Where they had him throw a football that was on fire, lighting the Olympic torch at the Coliseum in Los Angeles. And I forget, he had 3 words in that commercial. It was like, now it's our turn, or something like that. And it was to promote the fact that flag football is coming to the Summer Olympics.
It's our turn, I think is what it
It's our turn. There we go. In 2028. Now, it has not been confirmed whether or not NFL players are going to play in flag football, but we know it's coming. So now the question arises, will NFL players play in the 2028 Summer Olympics?
Yes, is the answer. It was if we went. It's like when they it's fitting because I'm wearing this shirt today.
It's a great shirt, by the way.
Team USA is playing for basketball, and I knew that. So I'm going yesterday at USA, and then today I've got Team USA from the Dream Team, the 1992, which was the first year that professionals could play back in the Olympics, right? And domination wasn't even. There was no question. They absolutely destroyed every team. We talk about Charles Barkley and be like, do you know anything about Angola? I know they're in trouble. Like, it's just a great line. But thinking about if they have NFL players play in flag football. Now, granted, they obviously don't play flag football, but of course, if you talk to Todd Herremans, maybe that's what training camp is right now.
Yeah, compared to Andy Reid days.
What those guys did. It would be like the 92 Dream Team because it is a sport that is inherently American. It is not an international sport. Basketball back in the day, I saw the stat. It was the Dream Team of 92 played against 9 total NBA players in the entire time. That's who they would face. This year they'll play, I think it's like 60-something.
It's in the 60s, yeah.
It's 60-something. Because the game became more global. It's a very global game. And so you're wondering if that would be the case now with football. Would it become more of a global game? But if they let NFL players, which I am wholeheartedly in favor of, because I would give anything to see Tyreek Hill in a flag football USA uniform just run roughshod over whomever Germany is trotting out.
And you would think he'd probably be catching balls from his former teammate, Patrick Mahomes, I would think would be the starting quarterback.
Patrick Mahomes in flag football is a cheat code. There's no way that wouldn't be allowed.
Now, you said flag football is inherently American. Do you know how flag football started? I looked this up before the show.
No.
It was a recreation activity for American soldiers during World War II. That's when flag football began. But here's the question, because I would love to see it too, just for fun. Logistically, though, I don't know how they could do it because right now the Summer Olympics are on and the NFL players are in training camp.
Push the season back. Come on. This is something, this is for America.
This is for
my joy. Okay? Make it early on in the Olympics.
You're
Make it
right,
like
though.
the first event.
It would be
fun. So much fun.
It would be like professionals going up against high school kids.
Christian McCaffrey in flag football. Like, that's
it's
out
almost
of control.
it's almost unfair.
I wouldn't watch 1 second of that.
Yes, you would.
Lie.
Yes, you would.
Lie.
Why do I need flag football to tell me that America is the best at football? I already know that. Why would I want to risk injury to anybody? I wouldn't watch a second. I have no interest in
It's not
NFL
about
players.
it. It's about domination.
I know we dominate anyway.
Give us all the medals.
Yes.
Yeah, until Jalen Hurts comes out with a hampered
Don't
knee
be
or
a
something
poo-poo.
like that.
Well, you know what? You're right. I'm being a hypocrite. I'm saying don't play in the preseason,
Yeah,
but
but
go
you-
play in the Olympics in a flag
Go
football
play
game.
Germany in the Olympics.
It's flag football.
Well, look, we put up a Twitter poll on this very subject.
We did. Yes, we did. And you can vote on this Twitter poll at 975
What are
The
we
Fanatic
asking?
on Twitter. Well, Amy, we're asking, do you want NFL players to play flag football in the 2028 Summer Olympics? 2 options. Pretty simple. Yes is at 39% and no, smartly, are at 61%.
Don't you do it.
look, here's why it's going to happen. Everything you're seeing from the NFL is to do what? They are trying to grow the game on an international level. There's a game in Brazil this year. Unfortunately, the Eagles are in it, and we lose a home game. They played in Germany. They're playing in London. They're doing everything they can to grow this game. What better way than to have your stars go to the Olympics and absolutely destroy every other country?
That would stop every other country from trying to play in the NFL because we went 90-0.
The 92 Dream Team is an exact parallel.
Yeah, Amy's shirt today, and our YouTube audience can see it, I remember that shirt. That is like an OG shirt. That came out when they did it.
Yeah.
That's not a remake, right? You've had that for a long time.
Yes, my mom got me this shirt a really long time ago. I think it was actually originally, I got it for me. I'm the youngest of 5, so I'm sure it was someone else's. And then
it got handed down.
And then it was mine.
And you got to keep it. Now, that is a
exactly.
great shirt. So she's got the 92 Dream Team on there. And to her point, you look at how many players, and I had this stat before. Let me see if I can find it. The 92 Dream Team faced 9 NBA players in the Olympics.
Uh-huh.
This year's 2024 USA team, 61. So to Tom's point, look, maybe, Tom, like Amy's saying, this is going to parallel it. The NFL players absolutely dominate in the 2028 Olympics, and now the game expands on an international level.
Or maybe all countries completely seize the contracts with the NFL, playing games in Germany and London because we absolutely destroyed them. Yeah, we're not even going to bother trying this because you destroyed us as bad as you did.
And it doesn't even have to be your first teamers. Let's be honest, okay? If no one plays flag football in the world, really, at the rate that we would play football. So, Britton Covey, come on down.
Yeah. Wait, it's going to work. Hold on. We just got tweeted by an avid follower. Tristan Homan does a lot of nice tweets for us. He just tagged us. Assuming his math is correct, the NFL players could do flag football in the Olympics. The 2028 games are scheduled July 14th through July 30th.
So he's put it at the beginning.
So it would work.
Done. Say less. Thank you, Tristan. Tom is so angry.
I'm shocked you guys have any interest in NFL players playing in this.
Yeah. I'm not, if you don't want to have your top-tier guy playing it, that's fine.
It would be the equivalent of Tyreek Hill stepping in and playing a high school team right now.
Well, let me ask you.
It's 100% what it would look like.
And that would not be fun for more than 2 minutes.
Just give us the gold medal anyway.
There's only 12. There's only 12 players on a team because there's only 5 that are on the field at any given time, is the way the Olympic rules work. Is there anybody on the current Eagles roster that you think would make the Olympic team, assuming that they took the best players from all 32 teams?
AJ.
I'm thinking maybe AJ, maybe Devontae. One of those two would probably make
Saquon was up there to me. Well, 2028 you got to think about here. So
Devontae will be
you need to be
younger.
wily.
Yeah, probably Devontae.
Good cuts.
It's interesting. Can't wait. Only got to go 4 more years.
I can.
Only got to go 4 years for it.
I think the lie, though, Tom, is that you wouldn't watch it. Like, you've watched table tennis or badminton or something random. There's no way you wouldn't at least check in on the flag.
When Team USA was dominating truly in basketball, I was not watching those games. Like 10 years ago. Yeah, because I don't want to
10 years ago, they were terrible. That was like
well, you know what I mean. Like when they were just absolutely dominating. I don't enjoy sports that aren't competitive in any way, and that's what that sport
And that's
would be.
why he's an Eagles fan, everyone. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it would be absolute domination. Actually, as we're thinking about which Eagles could play, if things go the way a lot of fans want them to go with Quinyon Mitchell,
there you go.
He would probably make the Olympic team in 4 years. If he turns into being one of the best corners in the NFL, which we're all hoping he can be. Oh, man, I'm excited for the Olympics. I got to wait 4 more years. Although I've been watching. You've been paying attention?
I've locked in on the Olympics. I watch all these. I look over. I stream it on the Peacock. They always have the stuff live, so it does ruin it a little bit later because I already know some of the stuff that happens. Yeah. But also it exposes me to some of these. I'm not going to call them random, but unfamiliar sports to me that I'm not as familiar with, that I enjoy very much.
I really, really think that I could play on the handball team.
No, you could not.
I think I could play on the if I practice, I think I could be pretty good at handball.
You did nothing but handball for like 3 years maybe. Have you ever seen handball live?
No, is it pretty intense?
Very intense, very fast.
So me and my wife were sitting down watching the gymnastics last night, which was a big surprise if you looked at the balance beam. Is that what they call it, the balance beam?
Yes, correct.
Italy won their first gold medal ever because Simone Biles fell, Sun Lee fell.
Suni Lee, yeah.
Suni Lee, that looked painful.
all of it looks painful, even when they landed correctly, to be honest.
That is true. But, yeah, it's interesting. I've been paying attention, but Charles Barkley's been paying attention as well. And Charles Barkley is on your shirt right now.
That he is.
So, coming up, we're going to have to play a clip because Charles Barkley was on Paul George's podcast. And you would have thought that maybe Charles, being on Joel's teammates' podcast, that maybe he would hold back, but that's not Charles Barkley. But you would have thought that maybe Charles Barkley would have held back on some things he had to say about Joel. But we're going to play that clip coming up because I want to get Amy's opinion on it because he did not hold back on Joel Embiid. But I also want to tell you about Fanatic Fan Fest because it is back. September 28th, Fan Fest 2024 with FanDuel. We'll be down at Xfinity Live. Get your tickets during our online ticket rate. It's this Thursday, 12 noon at 975thefanatic.com. It's the biggest party of the year for Philly sports fans. All of us hosts, celebrity guests, Philly sports legends, activities, games, and prizes. 975 The Fanatic has all the info. Go to 975thefanatic.com. And I said this yesterday, Amy satisfies 3 categories. She's a host, a guest, and a Philly sports legend. And she will be there. But as we're talking about the Olympics, we're talking about whether or not you want to see NFL players in the Olympics, and we're going to talk about the things that Charles Barkley had to say about Joel Embiid in the Olympics. Well, now it's time for our Westwood One Summer Games update.
Westwood One Sports presents this special update on the 2024 Summer Games, sponsored by Grainger. With supplies and solutions for every industry, Grainger has the right product for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Women's soccer semifinals getting started right now. Team USA and Germany. It's a rematch from the group stage. The U.S. won that 4-1. Women's volleyball quarterfinals. USA up 2-0 on Poland. Men's basketball quarterfinals. Serbia was down 24 in the first half, stormed back to stun Australia in overtime. Serbia will face either the top seed USA or Brazil, which is coming up this afternoon. Also this afternoon, the women's 200 meters. American Gabby Thomas is the gold medal favorite. Women's park skateboarding. American Bryce Wettstein is in 4th place with 1 run to go. With this Summer Games update, I'm Brad Heller, Westwood One Sports.
America yesterday, announcing that flag football is coming to the 2028 Olympics that will be in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Will NFL players be in the Olympics? I want them to be. Amy wants them to be because we want to dominate for that gold medal. Tom Albert says no way, doesn't want to see it.
Doesn't like joy.
And before we get into another gold medalist, Charles Barkley, we got a text on that subject, Tom? On the NFL players in the Olympics?
Yes, we do. We have a text here. This is from Bliff. Yeah, Bliff and Morel. The under-20 U.S. national football team was just embarrassed on a national level, losing to Japan and Austria, FYI. This was 1 month ago. The rest of the world isn't as far behind as you think. Now, I must have missed, I guess Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes, they all were playing in that, and they got blown out by Japan. I must have missed it. My bad, Bliff. Sorry.
Yeah, Bliff, listen, you may be correct when we're talking about the under-20 team. Those under-20 players would not be playing for flag football if they were at...
What do they have, like 1 year in college?
Yeah, if they were at Georgia and Alabama, they're not playing flag football. Right? I mean, if you're talking about some of the best players from the SEC, you really think that Saban, when he was still coaching, saying, sure.
Let's look at this under-20 team and see where some of those facts.
Let's see who we have on that.
It's like the 3v3 Olympic basketball team.
Yeah.
Like USA got eliminated already. Jimmer Fredette was their best player.
And he didn't play for 5 games, which is why they got smoked. Like, that's where that team's at.
It's not the same.
So... yeah, it's not the same. And if you put, and I think if you took 5 players from each, there's going to be 5 players on each side of the ball in the Olympics. You get 5 offensive players, 5 defensive players. If you take any 5 skilled position players from the NFL, they don't even have to be the best. They're going to dominate for a gold medal. I don't even think it needs to be. Now, it would be probably the likes of Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and those guys. You just take any 5 skilled position players and put them in the flag football games in 2028, I think America dominates for a gold medal.
Yeah, you could take practice squad players, and they'd be dominating. Also, by the way, you keep saying Mahomes. Lamar Jackson is the top flag football quarterback here. Come on, man.
Wait, hold on, though. I believe there are different rules, and maybe Amy knows better. She's a flag football connoisseur over here.
I don't want to be.
I don't think the quarterback is allowed to scramble outside the hashes. Is that the rule? There is a rule with
I'm talking about 9-year-old flag football. You have to still count to like 5 before you can touch the quarterback.
Yeah,
it's 100%. You can see the guys over there like counting until somebody's got. Shawnee's like breathing down.
There is a rule, but we'll talk more about that as it approaches 4 years from now.
We'll dive deeper into those rules
as we're talking about the Olympics. A former gold medalist who just happens to be in cartoon form on Amy Fadul's T-shirt today. Charles Barkley.
Charles.
He went on Paul George's podcast, and what's it called, Amy?
Podcast P.
Podcast P. And he wasn't too kind to our very own Joel Embiid. Listen to Barkley.
Y'all got a nice little window. Now, I hope this is a wake-up for Joel, this Olympic experience. He has not played well, and I'm hoping he's like, yo, man, I got to get in better shape. Because me personally, I think that's one of the reasons he's always injured. I don't think he's in good enough shape. But I think the way he's played, which is not well during the Olympics, should be a wake-up call for him. Like, you know what? I got to get in better shape. I got to get healthy. Because if we don't win the championship or go deep in the playoffs, it's going to be because of me.
So that was Charles Barkley on Podcast P with Paul George. Amy, what's your take on that? So he's saying the reason he always gets hurt is because he's not in shape. I'm not buying that.
I think I value Charles's opinion a lot, and I think that he is harder on Joel Embiid because as a basketball player, he knows what Joel Embiid is capable of. He has seen the talent. Guys, when they watch basketball, players, and coaches, when they watch Joel Embiid, they're always in awe. They're thinking, this guy started playing basketball. How is that possible? But at the same time, saying that he's injured because he's been out of shape is low-hanging fruit to me. It is. It's a little too easy an explanation. I think that Joel Embiid has shown up in better shape the last 2 years. Really, if you can go back, probably 3, but certainly the last 2 years. And it's not a coincidence that he was vying for the MVP last year when he got hurt, and that he won the MVP the year before. And then the year before that, he was in the MVP conversation. His conditioning is always going to be in question because of the size of him. That's just naturally. No one talks about Nikola Jokic's conditioning, do they?
No, and he's not in the best of shape. At least that's how he looks.
He does.
He doesn't look like he's in great shape.
But he stays healthy, so it doesn't come up to question. So when you look at Joel Embiid, it's like when you're looking for reasons for things to happen. There's a lot of things that go into it. Is conditioning part of it? I'm sure it is. I do think Joel Embiid has been in better shape the last 3 years than he has. And he has mentioned that. He has talked about that in the offseason. You talk to him before the season starts, and he'll talk about how it go back to something Jordan Davis said, like how you have to cut out certain things. Joel Embiid doesn't do the Shirley Temple nonsense anymore, and some of the things that he did when he was younger. That's part of becoming a professional athlete, is that you have to know how to take care of yourself and get healthy and whatever else. So I think that it's almost like a double-edged sword. The people that didn't want Joel Embiid to play in the Olympics for fear of injury, then they wanted him to show up in shape. How do you get in better shape than playing against the best athlete or the best basketball players in the world? And I don't think his entire campaign has been terrible. I understand it took an adjustment. Joel Embiid is not used to playing at this level with this many good players. He didn't grow up in the AAU system where you're playing on these all-star teams. He didn't grow up playing for the under-19 Team USA. But I think that he's done a very good job. I go back to the Germany game when I thought he started to figure some stuff out. And I think, all right, if you can get back to it, they obviously played today. I think that going forward, it's going to be a positive overall. I understand what Charles is saying, and yes, the bottom line is everyone knows that Joel Embiid has to show up healthy, every single aspect. Paul George, we talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "That's what my main goal is here, to make this guy show up healthy for the postseason. Wrap him in bubble wrap for all I care."
Yeah, but I do think Barkley would have been correct if we were talking about Embiid from a few years ago, to your point. I don't think him not being in shape has been an issue over the last couple of seasons. And when Barkley says that's why he gets hurt, I mean, he fractured his orbital bone twice. That has nothing to do with his health. He had somebody fall on his leg and injures his knee. I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with his conditioning. You can't prevent that from happening. But look, Barkley, like you said, he was somebody who had to battle weight.
Yeah, I think he recognizes certain aspects of it. And Barkley's talked about his journey of I just can't be sitting there crushing hamburgers all the time. I have to actually keep myself in shape and try to be the best possible version of it. I just think there's a frustration level with players when they see the talent that Joel Embiid has and they see his inability to stay healthy for the full 82.
And you said he used to drink Shirley Temples?
Joel Embiid. Oh, yeah.
That used to be my go-to at weddings as a kid.
Thing.
Thought I was so cool ordering Shirley Temples.
Joel Embiid did it as an adult.
Yeah, I mean, I did it when I was 7, Joel. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's grow up a little bit.
Oh, poor Joel.
But we haven't really talked Phillies today. We got a little bit into it earlier. When we get back, I want to talk about the Phillies because they lost another series opener, the 7th straight loss to open up a series in a row. But it wasn't all bad, but I did have hindsight always is 20/20 when it comes to Rob Thompson, but he did something last night that left me scratching my head that I want to talk about with Amy when we get back. This is Middays, Bill Colarulo with Amy Fedor.
from the Comcast Business Studios, powering possibilities. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com. This is Philadelphia's sports station for breaking news. Now, more of the Midday Show. 97.5 The Fanatic and 97.5thefanatic.com.
Welcome back in. 1 o'clock hour here on The Fanatic. Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul, Tom Alvord behind the glass. We've done a lot of Eagles talk to start the show. But we got to talk about the Fightin' Phils. Because they dropped the opener in a pretty big series against the LA Dodgers in LA last night. Not sure if you stayed up for it. It was a late one. It's going to be a late week, especially for our man Ricky Bowe. He'll be coming up at 2 o'clock on the best show ever. He was here. He didn't get much sleep last night doing postgame. Amy never gets some sleep.
Sleep's overrated.
Sleep is overrated. I tell my wife that constantly. It's overrated. She loves to sleep. I like to stay up. But stayed up for that game last night. So the Phillies lose 5-3. They now are only a half game up on the LA Dodgers when it comes to the National League race. And this is important because if you really assume this is going to be the matchup in the NLCS, which I think it will be, much rather have 4 games at Citizens Bank Park than only 3 having to go out to LA 4 times. And 26 days ago, after the Philadelphia Phillies swept the Dodgers, when it seemed like this team was playing at an all-time high, they were 6.5 games up on the Dodgers. Flash forward now, less than 4 weeks later, they're only a half game up on the LA Dodgers. And I look at last night's game as being an extremely important game. You wanted to get a win out in LA because then that would give you the tiebreaker over the Dodgers in the head-to-head matchup.
Got to get there first.
So you're in the 9th inning, Amy. 9th inning. Down 5-3. Man on first. 2 outs. Coming up to the plate, your 188 hitter, Garrett Stubbs, and Rob Thompson, who I have defended, who I don't think is a major culprit for what you've seen from this team over the last 20 games. He decides, I'm going to let Garrett Stubbs hit and essentially wave the white flag and said, chalk this one up as a loss, boys.
It was bad. I think the bigger problem is why Garrett Stubbs is your backup catcher.
Well, now this is interesting that I'm the one who's angry he let Stubbs hit. I have been a proponent of keeping Stubbs here. I agreed with it.
Ship has sailed.
I understood it, saying, hey, listen, Marshawn may be a better catcher, but he's not going to play every day. Let him go down to AAA, play more often, keep your vibes guy here.
We don't need any more vibes.
Well, the problem
is vibes are fine.
If you're going to manage this way, then I'm just going to say I'm going to admit I'm wrong. That's hard for me to do. But if you're going to manage this way, if you're not going to allow JT Realmuto to play on a night where you've decided he's not playing at all.
Right.
See,
that's what he said afterwards. He said,
well, because
true day off.
True day off for JT. So I was just talking to Tyrone and Ricky about this before we came on the air. Well, then why not bring in Weston Wilson, bring in Edmundo Sosa?
Sosa, I'll give you. Weston Wilson does nothing for me.
But whoever you bring in, they're going to give you a better chance than Garrett Stubbs at the plate. Assuming they strike out or they ground out, game's over anyway, you never see JT. But if they hit a 2-run shot and JT Realmuto has to come in the bottom of the 9th to catch, then give him off today. If you wanted to give him a whole day off, then give him off today. You can't concede that game, Amy. It's too important for the NL race. It's too important for this Phillies team to just wave the white flag in the 9th inning like that.
Yeah, the 9th inning, I was more problematic in the innings before when you had guys actually in scoring position. You needed a home run in order to get that game tied at that point, Castellanos being on first. So it was a long shot. The game was lost in the previous inning when you're sitting there and you had guys in actual scoring position and the actual bats that are supposed to perform did not perform. The top of the lineup. That to me was a little bit more. That's where the game was lost. It was a last gasp at any way in the 9th. Phillies have, and I'll have to get the actual numbers on it because Scott Fransky had it a couple of weeks, or I guess he did. Whoever had it, and it was. The pinch hitting numbers for the Phillies this year are atrocious. It's something like 8 for 60, or it's something really bad. And I think there's only been like one or two of those that are extra base hits or have turned into an RBI. It's pretty bad. So they don't have a very good bench and in the situational as far as pinch hitting. But for me, the ninth inning, that's not where the game, they didn't lose the game in the ninth. They had lost it in the previous inning when you had people on in scoring position and the heart and the guys that are supposed to be performing for you are striking out. That's where the game was lost. It was the ninth inning, last gas. You could throw anybody. You could have thrown up Barry Bonds up there and they wouldn't have, well, that's not true. Someone else, someone slightly lesser, and they wouldn't have won that game because the game had already been lost in the eighth inning.
Well, and that's why I have not been putting a majority of the blame on Rob Thompson throughout these recent struggles, because your hitters have to be able to hit. Your stars have to show up. They have to be able to play. Aaron Nola has been Mr. Consistency. He can't give up 4 runs in the third like that. I think he got hit by the 7, 8, and 9 hole hitters last night, if I'm not mistaken.
He got worked by those.
So, that can't happen. But, look, I just found out, too, I'm going to be $1 less richer because Dylan McKinnon just texted me. There's now a $1 fine every time you call Stubbs a vibes guy per the best show ever. So
listen, I was a big proponent of let's keep him up here. JT plays all the time, good times. They've been able to. And then JT went down. I thought, okay. Well, then Marshawn come up. I was like, all right. Oh, he's still no. Now it's all about winning. It's been fun. 188 is not going to get it done.
No, it's not. And to your point, you're right. They need to come through in the 8th, so it doesn't even get to that point.
But that's where the game was lost.
But when you have Stubbs coming up to the plate with 2 outs, down by 2, with technically the tying run at the plate if someone goes yard, that's why I say bring in a Weston Wilson. Yeah, chances are he doesn't, but why not give him a shot to go yard there to tie it up? Why just wave the white flag and say we're going to lose this game? To me, there's a reason why there's 27 outs in baseball. Make them earn all 27 outs. At that point in the game, you can't let Stubbs bat. You just can't let him happen. You can't let him get up to the plate there.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway, I'm getting all worked up. But here's what's frustrating.
And it happened.
7 straight series openers, Amy. They lost 6-2 to the A's way back when, before the break. 8-7 to the Pirates, 7-2 to the Twins, 3-1 to the Guardians, 14-4 to the Yankees, 10-2 to the Mariners, and now 5-3 to the Dodgers. That's your last 7 series openers. This team needs to play better. But I did say there were some positives last night. I can't believe I'm saying this. Nick Castellanos is a reliable piece in the outfield right now. At the plate, he's been your best hitter. I can't believe how good Casty has been. And he goes triple last night. I still don't trust him because I'm afraid he's going to fall off. But outside of Castellanos, who's been the biggest star on this team?
In the one win we've seen in a week, Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, just Zach Wheeler. I mean, at the plate. But look, you did see, and Castellanos talked about it post-game. They didn't seem to be pressing as much. The clubhouse was good. I think they are playing better baseball, Tom. I'm not panicking with how this team played yesterday. You want to see more from Nola. You don't want to see him get worked by the bottom of the Dodgers lineup. You want to see them hit with runners in scoring position. Look, Harper goes 1 for 4. Trey Turner has still continued this cold streak that he's on.
That's been rough.
But it's not as bad. I mean, maybe this is just the eye test, but it's not as bad as the record has reflected over the last week or two.
Yeah, no, I think this team's playing a little bit better baseball. No, look, they're still in a funk. It's still frustrating that they're losing games, but what I've seen the last couple games, it looks like they're getting closer and closer to getting out of this thing. So, obviously, still a ways to go here. It's one thing to look like you're playing good baseball, and it's another thing to actually start playing good baseball and piling some wins together, but hopefully, this is the start of a turnaround here. You have Clayton Kershaw on the bump tonight for the Dodgers. Big name, hasn't exactly pitched like Clayton Kershaw that we've come to know and remember here because he's had a bit of a down season. Looks like he might be cooked. Phillies still have an opportunity to potentially win this series, so hopefully the start of some good signs for the Phils.
I talk about them playing good baseball. In the second inning when they get their 2 runs, I loved that inning. So not only do you get Castellanos triple, which was a little bit lucky, the guy misplays it in center, But then Stott beats out a ground ball to first.
Yeah, you're thinking good things are happening, right?
Right, and then Hayes gets the hit, and Stott, great base running, gets the third. Hayes takes second. That results in a pass ball. Stott scores. Like, this is the little things you want to see from a baseball team. Unfortunately, that was pretty much all you got.
And that's all we saw. Yeah, I mean, Nick Castellanos spoke post-game, and he talked about how, they really are grinding out there, and I feel like that was the apt word. It feels like a bit of a grind. And when you're feeling that, and he's using the word grinding, and he didn't mean it in a negative, but I think you can take it in a way of like, you're out there and every single at bat, every single pitch, everything seems like a grind, and you're just trying to work your way out of it. And he felt it earlier on in the season because he was grinding out there and nothing was coming his way. Nothing was working at the bat for him. He seemingly worked out his way out of it when it comes to, his offense. But you're seeing everybody else struggling, and just like, he said, we're in a funk. The problem is the funk has lasted a little too long, so now it's turned really into something that's not a red flag. I'm not overly concerned because they still have a good record and there's still good pieces there, and I think that they're going to work their way out of it. But at some point you're thinking all right, I get it. You're grinding away. You're in a funk. Just stop. Just stop doing it. Stop doing it.
Well, and to your point, Zach Wheeler the other night, that makes things a lot easier on everybody when your starting pitcher dominates.
It goes 8 innings.
The way he does. And some news came out last night. Taijuan Walker could be back this weekend. And Ranger Suarez.
I'm all good on the Taijuan Walker.
Yeah, he's not going to do.
All good.
But
Rather
Ranger
him than
Suarez.
Colby Allard.
Yeah. Well, although Allard pitched great the other day.
That's all right. Pitched great one day.
He pitched great.
He's
if it
got
wasn't
a 5
for
ERA in AAA.
Is it
Taijuan
Walker, Colby Allard?
It is. He is. I think.
But listen, why is Colby Allard catching some strays? He did his job the other day. Jeff Hoffman blew that game for them.
That was exceptionally rare.
But listen, brighter news. I'm with you on Taijuan Walker. Doesn't move the needle for me, but Ranger Suarez does. And yesterday, Suarez threw 20 to 25 pitches in a bullpen session in the sweltering heat at Dodger Stadium, Corey Seidman points out from NBC Sports Philly. But he will not be back during the Phillies road trip, but is trending in the right direction. Rob Thompson, he feels a lot better.
Okay.
Not just a lot better. Rob Thompson said a lot better. Yeah.
A lot better.
See, I'd be concerned if you only felt a lot better, but because it's a lot better, I feel good, I'll be honest.
Yeah, double a lots.
Mitch from Phoenix, though, doesn't believe in the starting pitching. Let's go to the phones. What's up, Mitch? You're on the Fanatic.
Lebanon near the ocean or no?
You there?
Mitch, are you near the ocean, Mitch? Because you're in Phoenix.
I'm going to put Mitch on hold.
I feel like he's talking to somebody else.
I think he's buying a shore house. Go get it, Mitch. Is it on the ocean?
I was like, I don't know.
Is it on the ocean? But, look, let's hope this team gets back in the winning column tonight. Now, there's a lefty on the mound tonight. Clayton Kershaw, who's coming back from injury. I think he's got 2 outings under his belt since he came back. So we'll see how this team does tonight. I'm curious, do you see Brandon Marsh in the lineup tonight, Amy?
Yeah, let's just stop messing with that. Stop messing with it.
Well, he's been actually hitting left-handed pitching pretty well this week.
He's had a couple.
Not this week.
Yeah,
it's only Tuesday.
That one game he did.
Yeah.
No, but previously in the series before, he had been seeing, I thought, the ball a little bit better from the left-handers that he had faced, and I thought that was a positive sign. They have these kind of 10-day tryouts they talked about with Austin Hayes. Maybe this is it. He had that great play, the Sandlot play. The other day when he caught the ball just haphazardly, just kind of put his glove out. But I'd like to see it. Stop messing with things, okay? Let's just see the lineup and call it a day.
Well, I'm taking a look at the updated odds. These are according to FanDuel. Phillies are still overwhelmingly favored to win the NL East. They're a minus 550. The Braves come in at plus 430. Believe it or not, the Mets plus 3,200. I thought with their recent surge,
still the Mets.
But they are still the Mets. But here's the concerning one. League winners. The Phillies are not the favorite to win the National League. They are coming in at plus 250. The Los Angeles Dodgers now are at plus 160. And we know you can get...
That moved a while ago, I feel like.
It did. And
maybe like a month ago.
And you could get to the World Series without being the best team in the National League.
Well, as we've learned the last 2 years, who cares about that one seed?
Yeah, you have seen it. But it just would be very tough, a tough pill to swallow if the Phillies went to the NLCS and didn't have home field advantage against the Dodgers after they had such a big lead.
Because they can't win one game out there.
Yes.
Just win one game. That's all they need is one game.
Win one.
It'll clinch it.
And there's Ricky Bo. Ricky Bo.
What up, Bobo?
Yeah, he told me he's never been in this studio before. He says it's nice. It's quiet in here.
He's never been in the producer's studio?
No.
He's been here for how long?
He just wanted to check it out. That's all.
He's been in there
before.
before.
He's a special guy, that Rick.
Tell Ricky Bo to go take a nap. He's got 45 minutes until the best show ever. He needs a little bit of sleep.
It's just great.
I think he's out of it right now, man. The eyes are slanted. I think he's still tired from last night.
But that's what Ricky Bo does for us. He's very dedicated. Late night last night doing post game after the Dodgers, and yet he's here with a smile on his face. That's why we love him, Aim.
Mr. Bobo. It's good stuff.
Mr. Bobo. But I'm curious what his thoughts are when he comes on at 2 o'clock. I know they're going to get into some Phillies talk about what happened last night, but it is concerning. Let's hope they can get back in the winning column tonight. Who's on the mound? Christopher Sanchez for the Phillies tonight. So 2 lefties. Kershaw for the Dodgers, Sanchez for the Phillies. So we will see. We'll do some more Phillies talk coming up tomorrow, but you can definitely get it on the best show ever. You have one more point about the Phils?
No, people talk about like the panic button and whatever else. I don't think that we're like hovering around the panic button, but there are signs that are not going well, and it's other teams that are starting to catch up and play better. And the Phillies, it's not like one thing has happened. Earlier in the season, it was like, all right, well, Trey Turner down for injury. Well, that stunk, but everybody else seemed to be, and then it was, JT Realmuto was down, but then everybody else was. Now it's kind of like everybody seems to be scuffling. The pitching seems to be off, and you have guys that are normally have been very solid in that bullpen have been really struggling. And I know that's, I think, the thing that's really made this exacerbated, that it's all happening at the same time. You also hope that it tends to happen in a good way all at the same time. So Ranger comes back, and if Taijuan Walker can just do something. I'm not asking for a lot, Tom. I'm asking for more than nothing. Is that fair?
That's a high bar. Just more than nothing.
I think that's pretty fair.
Well, technically, nothing would be pretty good as a starting pitcher.
Take also
to have these 0 runs. I've said it a couple times. Everything early on the first few months of the season, they were winning in so many different ways. Now they're losing in so many different ways. Like, it just feels like they're losing a different way every single night, where Jeff Hoffman's so good, he gives up 4 earned runs the other night that loses you a game. Matt Strahm has been so good, he gives up a 3-run homer to a lefty in Jazz Chisholm, something he never does. Last week against the Yankees, you had Wheeler giving up 7 earned runs. Sanchez gave up 6 earned runs. Phillips, who had been so good, gives up 8 earned runs. It feels like every single night there's a new way to lose, but this team is extremely talented. I think eventually talent rises back to the top, especially when guys get healthy, and that's going to start to have a little bit of a shift in the momentum there.
Yeah, and Trey Turner's got to start hitting again. The guy is 9 for his last 60 over 14 games. His batting average dropped from 347 all the way down to 308. I had hopes that Turner was going to win the batting title, be the first one in Philadelphia to do it since Richie Ashburn, I believe. I don't think that's going to happen now.
We talked so much about Bryce Harper in the last couple of weeks because of his slump. Trey's been awful, and JT has been awful, too, at the plate here. And
JT's really struggled.
Really bad, yeah. And those two things, like, you can maybe get by if one of those guys are struggling or two, but when you have all three in Harper, Trey, and JT, and even Schwarber was in a little bit of a funk there, too, you're not going to win any baseball. No team. The Dodgers aren't going to win when 4 of their best players are all cold at once. The Orioles, you can't win. It's good to see Bryce is getting out of it. Let's hope that Trey and JT can kind of turn things around here, too.
Yeah. JT, no RBIs, no extra base hits since he's come back from injury. So that's not great. That is not great, but maybe it all comes back tonight. Maybe a big win against a lefty and Clayton Kershaw gets this team going. We put out the Twitter poll yesterday saying, did the win against the...
Yeah, that was it.
Wait, who'd they play?
Mariners.
The Mariners. Did the win against the Mariners get the mojo going? And majority of people thought it would have.
Like, we like joy. We try to choose joy here.
And now one game, and we're like,
that's it.
What's going on with this team?
We're choosing violence instead.
What is going on with this team? But we'll see what happens. We'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm sure the best show ever is going to get into the Phillies with Tyrone, Ricky Bo, and Silvana coming up at 2 o'clock. But I want to switch gears back to the Eagles because Kellen Moore spoke this morning right before practice. And one of the questions he was asked was that he's never had a mobile quarterback before and how are they going to take advantage of Jalen Hurts' legs this season? And I thought his answer was telling. You got to read between the lines with Kellen Moore because he has that head coach speak, like Amy likes to say. Doesn't like to give you much. But if you read between the lines, I think we can kind of figure out what their plan is with Jalen Hurts in the running game. So I want to get back into that conversation coming up next. This is Middays. I'm Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul. Don't go anywhere. HVAC Lion Conklin. Attention HVAC contractors. For equipment, parts, and supplies for every heating and cooling job, visit one of Ferguson's counter locations in Bensalem, King of Prussia, Pennsauken, or Westchester. Bill Colarulo along with Amy Fadul today. Appreciate everybody who's tuned in all show long. Way back in the 10 o'clock hour, we were talking about some things that Kellen Moore had to say before practice today. And one of the ones that stood out to us was when he started talking about quarterbacks in the running game, something that hasn't been a big part of Kellen Moore offenses in the past, but maybe it will be this year. Listen to Kellen Moore.
Yeah, quarterback run game. Obviously, it's a phenomenal piece. Very prominent in college football. Certainly, there's aspects of it still in the NFL. It certainly gives you the extra numbers in the run game, but there's an awareness. NFL is long season, so we just got to be smart about it as we go, but we want to continue to utilize it as much as we can.
So, Amy, you got to read between the lines with Kellen Moore because he doesn't give you much, but it does sound like it's going to be a part of this offense. He understands the importance of it. It's a skill set that Jalen has that a lot of other teams don't have that luxury of having that +1 in their offense like the Eagles can with Jalen. But when he says we're going to be smart about it, and he makes sure to reference it's in the college game, this is a longer season, and we got to be smart, seems to me they're not going to do it very often, but it will be a part of the offense.
Yeah, I took away with the smart aspect of let's set him up for success with that. Let's set him up in situations where it's not a scramble, it's not a running for your life, and that's where you get the yards from. It's here are all your progressions. Check through every single one of those, then go look over here, and then if you need to, run. Or several design runs as far as keeping the defenses honest and in a smart way where you've got enough protection around him and other options that if the run isn't working as much or in the way that you designed it to, that you've got an outlet for that. So that when I took away the smart was, it's not just going to be, all right, well, we're going to run you, 15 carries a game and then just call it a day. It's like we're going to pick and choose our scenarios. We're going to pick and choose how it's implemented, and certainly will be dictated also by the opponent.
And I know there are fans out there, though, they don't want to see him run because they're afraid he's going to get hurt. And they're not wrong. You look back in 2021, he has the left ankle sprain. He misses a game. Then he returns too quickly, ended up having surgery in the offseason. 2022, we all remember that cold, frozen field in Chicago. He lands on the shoulder, and he misses 2 games. They lose both games. He comes back and really wasn't the same until the playoffs.
Right.
But then clearly looked fine in the Super Bowl when he throws for over 300 yards. Last year, though, does play all 17 games, but there were a few in there where he had to wear the knee brace, and he just never looked as explosive as he's looked in the past. So I do understand not wanting him to get hurt. I just don't want to try to turn this guy into someone that he's not. He has a skill that most teams don't have. Let's keep the pressure on these defenses where they have to at least be worried that Jalen's going to pull it. So I want to see Jalen run the ball, and I want to see him do it with design runs, not just as a scrambler. Look, Patrick Mahomes runs when necessary.
Right. Different.
I want this to be design plays for Jalen Hurts in the running game, but he's got to be smart. And we joked earlier, Trey Turner's not hitting? Well, he can contribute to Philadelphia. Get him over to the NovaCare complex. Teach Jalen Hurts how to slide.
It's the beauty of a slide right there.
It's the best slide I've ever seen.
It's just so smooth. But Jalen Hurts, I think, if you take away, and I know we mentioned it earlier, but if you take away that aspect of his game, I think you're taking away a large chunk of who he is as a quarterback. And I think that would be more detrimental for his development and his success as the Eagles quarterback. You need him to be fully confident in everything that he does under center and when the ball is snapped. And if you tell him, no more running, I think that's really going to hamper him more than it would any kind of thought process of like, well, you better not run because, you're going to get hurt. Yes, when you run, you open yourself up to injury. That's true for any aspect of it. And I think that you can be smart about it and pick and choose. But I think that, when you think about trying to get the best from Jalen Hurts, you have to include the running game for him. You have to.
And I understand some of the concerns because we've talked about this at length today, too. We had a few people on our YouTube chat saying, well, he can't read the field very well. I don't want Jalen to lean on his running ability as a crutch all the time, where the moment there's pressure, he bails. You want to see him go through his progression, step up in the pocket, create time for himself in the passing game. So I don't want to see him just go to his first read and then run. And I don't think he will, and I think that's something that they're working on, and maybe something that's going to help significantly this year. I worry that it puts too much on his plate, but that he is also now responsible for blitz protections along with Cam Jurgens at the line of scrimmage. But Kellen Moore was also asked about that and Jalen's freedom to adjust plays at the line of scrimmage. Tom, can you play more 9 for us?
I think obviously it's a collective effort as we continue to build this thing and evolve. You want to utilize as many tools as you can while keeping them clean and clear for the entire offense. And sometimes it's not necessarily about Jalen, but it's making sure that all 11 are on the same page. And so he'll continue to have those tools. He's done an excellent job through camp of just utilizing different adjustments when he needs to, protections, routes, run game. He's doing a phenomenal job with this.
So there was a lot of that in there from Kellen Moore, not just in that clip, about how phenomenal of a job Jalen's doing, how great Jalen looks, how excellent he's doing.
Great.
Everything's great. But there are going to be things on Jalen's plate that he hasn't had to do before. He never had to adjust protection at the line of scrimmage. He didn't necessarily have a lot of freedom to change plays at the line. And you hear Kellen there talking not only about protection, but making changes to the routes, making changes in the running game. That could help Jalen, though, get a full understanding of becoming that field general. You said your favorite quarterback of all time, Peyton Manning.
A sheriff.
Right? Not wanting to put him on that level, but what made Peyton so great, he would come to the line of scrimmage. He was able to be, there's the mic right away, and then design
out
the
of
play.
Control, probably.
Yeah, he was the best. What was his Omaha?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? But we don't need Jalen to be at that level, but it certainly can help Jalen Hurts if he gets to the line of scrimmage and he knows where the blitzes are coming from, where the pressure is going to come from, what routes may work, and making changes at the line of scrimmage. Is that going to help him become more of that field general?
Yeah, I mean, to say that he's not read the defenses ever before, and I know some people have said that, or doesn't read them well, that's a little disingenuous. He has certainly read them the reason he didn't have to read them is because he had Jason Kelce, one of the greatest centers to ever play the game, doing all of that for you, and that is what Cam Jurgens will certainly help him do. Jalen Hurts didn't have to do all of those type of things as far as walking up, being under center, and looking across. Jalen Hurts is able to look across and see what the defense is giving him. He has been around football a long time. He did it in college. He walked up to that line, put his hands under the center, or certainly checked it with everybody along the line, saw what he saw, and there's a lot of communication that goes on between the quarterback and his linemen at that point. And it's a conversation, really, both ways. They're recognizing, you could see it anytime you watch the Eagles. You see Jason Kelce's head pop up, and he starts looking around. He starts barking things out. Jalen Hurts has taken that in. So to say that he can't read the defense or doesn't read the defense or doesn't need to or whatever people are saying out there, that is just, I think that's off the mark. He has not had to read it in a way that a lot of the other quarterbacks had because he had a tremendous center for his career, and now he doesn't have that guy. He's got a guy who's played center multiple times. He was chosen to be the center. He played center when Jason Kelce had his elbow cleaned out last preseason. So Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts getting on the same page is crucial for this offense. But I feel like Jalen Hurts is going to be able to sit back and read that defense just as well as he did in college, and maybe not just as well as Jason Kelce did, because Jason Kelce is an all-timer and was around the league forever. But I feel like Jalen Hurts is going to be fine at being able to read through what he's going to be able to see and communicate that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I said earlier in the show, Jalen's still young. He's 25 years old. He'll be 26 tomorrow. Happy birthday, Jalen Hurts. But he's still a young guy, and he's had a lot of success to start his career. I'm excited to see what he's going to do under Kellen Moore with all of these weapons and now having more responsibility in that offense of calling protections and doing things. I do get nervous that maybe it's not going to be right away.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's any question it's not going to be right away.
Because there's going to be some growing pains, I'm sure, come week one when you're asking this guy, 10th play caller in 9 years, new offense, new terminology, and now, hey, you're also responsible for blitz protection and making adjustments at the line of scrimmage. But a way that can certainly help is don't try to change him. Mm-hmm. Let him run the football. Call some design runs. Put that pressure on the defense where now they need to be concerned about Jalen Hurts. And we threw that question out way back in the 10 o'clock hour. Do you want to see Jalen Hurts run the football this season? You can still get in on the text board, 610-632-0975. Send us a text. Do you want to see Jalen Hurts run the ball this season? And we have a text on the board, Tom.
Yes, we do. It's Christian from Widener who says he absolutely wants to see Jalen Hurts run the ball. It helps spread the defense, opens up some different plays potentially for the offense as well throughout the latter of the game. And he also says, as for preseason games, I want starters to play at least a quarter of game one.
See, all right, I'm with him on the Jalen running. 100% with him on the Jalen running. And it continues to come out whether the starters will play. Little promo here. Me and Andrew Salciunas are going to bring you an Eagles pregame show Friday night starting at 6 o'clock. Excited to work with Andrew Salciunas. Haven't had the opportunity yet other than a few hits here and there on the morning show. So looking forward to that. But I hope as we're preparing for that game, we're not talking about the starters. Because here's my thing about it, Amy. Do we really think one series in one game is going to make that much of a difference come January in the playoffs?
Are you asking me as a fan or as a person that's trying to look at this from a journalistic perspective?
Either one.
A fan, they want to see their starters out there.
Yeah, I understand that.
That's what they want to see. But no, in the grand scheme of things, if A.J. Brown takes 4 snaps, it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of the season. There are some instances where I would not mind seeing Cam Jurgens get on the same page as Jalen Hurts back there. I would like to see that in a game situation. You don't have – practices are so different now. The 11-on-11s just don't happen. Even when you're wearing pads, it's still not – that's why they do these joint practices. That's why they have those things.
But for me, I know what you're saying. And if it was where you could go in there and Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts are going to go up against the defense in preseason that game planned for the Eagles offense and put some blitz disguises and some unique looks at Jalen Hurts that are specifically for Jalen Hurts, then I could get behind it. They're going to come out in a vanilla defense. They're going to run a base defense, no game planning whatsoever for Jalen or all the Eagles' weapons. So to me, it's not worth the risk reward's not there. The risk of injury is not worth
vanilla,
the reward.
Then how's he going to get hurt?
Well, because you don't. Well, that's a good point. Look at Amy trying to lawyer me over here. Well, because look, your offense is still going to be adjusting. You could miss an assignment. You know, you may have. We don't know who the starting right guard's going to be.
Right. All the more reason to put that guy out there.
But do you play Lane Johnson in this game? Do you go with Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson? Because if you're going to have Jalen in the game, you got to have your whole starting 5 in the game.
I would think that they're going to trot out those guys for at least a series or two to try to just get to. It will be very vanilla. The defense will be vanilla. The offense will be vanilla. It'll be like last year. I think that you'll try to trot. They will trot those guys out there for a series or two to try to. I understand. Hey, don't take any risks. Football is risky enough. They've been practicing. They're going to do one joint practice.
Normally they would do 2, but because they play Cleveland in the regular season,
correct,
they can't do a joint practice with Cleveland. Well,
did you see the Giants joint practice with the Lions? That went well.
There was another fight today.
That's amazing.
Malik Neighbors started a fight today for the Giants. That one got pretty ugly today.
Yeah, I would too if Daniel Jones was my quarterback. I don't blame him.
I'd fight everybody. That's the most fight the Giants are going to show this entire season.
Poor Daniel Jones taking strays here.
No, they're not strays.
I don't feel bad for him, though. He made a ton of money and he stinks.
All right.
But we'll continue this conversation coming up, and I also want to get our final Twitter poll numbers on whether or not fans want NFL players in the Olympics in 2028 because flag football is here. So we'll do all of that coming up next.
975thefanatic.com.
Phil Colarulo and Amy Fadul with you today on Middays. Before the break, we were talking about Jalen Hurts. Sounds like the quarterback run will be a part of the 2024 Eagles offense. Now, how much is still yet to be determined. Sounds like they're going to be smart with it, as they should be. But I'm happy to hear that Kellen Moore is going to utilize the QB run. It's something that Jalen does well, and it's something that helps this team win. When Jalen runs, this team wins football games. That's just the reality. The stats back it up. So I don't want to see them change Jalen Hurts. He doesn't have to take on unnecessary hits. Get out of bounds, get down. I don't care about the extra yard here or there. But simply having a defense have to game plan for Jalen Hurts in the running game, to me, is the way to go.
Yeah, we always talk about, we've talked about, keeping defenses honest and look at how many offensive weapons they have, and Saquon Barkley and using him this way, and getting Dallas Goedert involved in actual passes over the middle. Having another aspect of that offense is always going to help, because then you have that multiplicity and there's different looks that are going to be coming across when.
Great movie, too, by the way.
Multiplicity?
Yeah.
Is that the one with
Michael Keaton?
Michael Keaton, thank you very much.
And they kept making a copy of a copy.
Yeah, got all of his housework done. But yeah, so when you think about like the multiple looks, different options, and I think that you can't take away one thing. It just doesn't work as well. And this offense trying to go and be much more dynamic, you have to have the nature of him running.
And we threw that question out to everybody today. Do you want Jalen Hurts to run? And we said, hey, send us a text. And we have a couple texts on that, Tom.
Yes, we do. We have Sean from Levittown who says absolutely Hurts should be running. Maybe 5 to 7 design plays per game. It makes the defense think, but most importantly, it helps Barkley with the workload. Barkley never had that kind of help in New York.
Interesting, because I've had fans say the other thing. Like, you don't need Jalen Hurts to run because you have Saquon Barkley. This texter's saying it'll help Saquon with the workload. Not a bad idea, because you don't want to see Barkley get hurt either.
You know what? Tush push, Saquon Barkley. That's your new. It's your job now.
Did you see they changed the rule a little bit?
Yeah, but it's still.
It went under the radar, but yes, there's not going to be able to be. Last year, when Jalen would go under center, AJ would be right on his butt, or Dallas would be right on his butt. They have to be a couple yards off the ball now.
So they get a running start. To push
a running start to push Jalen.
So there you go. That's my new thing. Saquon Barkley, this is now your job.
Now, we haven't
you can
had.
Go ahead and drive through.
All the callers and all the texters so far seem to be, yes, Jalen needs to run. Do we have any texts on the board that say otherwise, or is it another positive one?
No, it's a positive one. This is from Dan from Central Jersey. He wants to talk a little bit more. He says with Jalen Hurts as a runner. So keep the starters off the field during the preseason, and Jalen in the offense is best when he is a threat as a runner. I think he grew a ton as a pocket passer last year, which is great, but there needs to be a balance of getting him out of the pocket with design, rollout, run options, not those terrible and obvious QB draws like last season. He does need to learn how to slide, though.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. A lot of good points there, too. It doesn't just need to be the quarterback draw. I'd like to see a couple QB sweeps in there, some rollouts, some bootlegs. There we go. Love the bootleg. But, yeah, I think we're all on the same page here. Be smart about it, but don't eliminate it. Seems to be the general consensus. Tom, you with us on that?
Yeah, definitely. Be smart about it. Now, I think longevity, your best bet as a quarterback to succeed over a long period of time is in the pocket more. Like, I don't know how many hits I want my quarterback taking long term. Even a guy like Josh Allen, where it feels like he takes way too many hits.
He's also a massive human being.
Yeah, he's 6'5", 240 pounds, and who knows how long he's going to be able to still do that. So I do obviously want him to utilize his legs. That's something that's very important to his game and this offense. But like you said, maybe be a little bit more selective and not completely rely on it like we saw a lot last season at times.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page with this. Now, what we're not all on the same page with, Amy, is NFL released a video yesterday. Jalen Hurts was in it, promoting the Olympics for 2028. Flag football's coming. Does that mean NFL players are going to be in it? Amy and I want NFL players in it. We want to absolutely dominate the world.
We just want to win.
In American football. Not really, flag football. Tom says no. He doesn't need to see the starters. He doesn't need to see any of these stars play. But we put up a Twitter poll. What do our Twitter followers say, Tom?
Yeah, last final Twitter poll results for the day. Do you want NFL players to play flag football in the 2028 Summer Olympics? 61% say no, smart people, and 39% say yes. We had one comment here that I liked a lot. They say, no, they play enough flag football during the NFL season.
Oh, I like that.
That's good.
But I'm surprised that many people don't want to see NFL players dominate.
They want
a lot of smart people out there.
They don't want their players to get hurt. They feel like it's probably unnecessary.
I can understand that.
I think it's like, you listen, all those guys that are in the XFL, come on through.
They probably still would dominate. Even
Right?
the XFL guys would probably still dominate. And look, you're not going to have any physical contact. You're not worried about that. But, yeah, you're worried about the ACL tears,
Twisted
the
Hamstrings.
Achilles heels,
Yeah, I don't
the
need any
Achilles
of that.
tears.
Your fast twitch muscles.
Yeah, to prove to me that USA is better than Germany and Brazil in flag football, or in football in general.
So maybe then let me say
You're
this.
welcome.
I'd like for the NFL players to play just no Philadelphia Eagles then. Let's just dominate with other players. Let's dominate with other players.
We want you guys to play. We don't want our guys to play, but you guys.
Everybody else.
Yeah,
just
go
like
America.
Just like I want Hard Knocks to continue their off-season episode, but never the Eagles, because what we watched with the Giants was an absolute disaster for them. But I loved watching every second of it.
It was like watching a train wreck.
It was so fascinating to me. Like I love doing this. But if I could do anything else, I'd want to be a general manager of an NFL team. That would be my dream job, in addition to this. But want to thank Tom for producing today. Thank Amy for being with me. She'll be with me again on Friday. But coming up now, best show ever with Ricky, Tyrone, and Silvana.
Fanatic Sports Update.
Another practice.